Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hang Up here on a Wednesday. I'm Matt Dillahunty. What's my hang up today? Well, it's really ex-pastors. In the years that I've been doing this, 20 years ago, roughly, I started doing stuff on the atheist experience. And at that point, I had already been out of Christianity for a little bit of time and had been writing things online, writing counter sermons to people's sermons on little web e-magazines and things like that, and engaging in debates. But a lot of it was just study and interacting and trying to figure out, hey, I was raised steeped in Christianity from the time that I was born. Walked down the aisle at the age of 5, accepted Jesus into my heart, watched people in my family convert from Catholicism to being Southern Baptists, so that I had Baptists on both sides of the family, got involved with Pentecostal churches on occasion. And then I joined the Navy, found my way out of religion eventually. And it was, in my case, more of I thought God was punishing me for being a terrible Christian, caring more about my secular life, my job, having fun. That's where my focus was. And when my job went away, I thought it was God punishing me. And so I apologized to God and I hit my knees, and I spent a good year and a half in pretty serious prayer and study, trying to find how to be the best representative of Christ and Christianity that I could be. And a lot of times, for years, people would just say, Matt's an ex-pastor. Matt's a former pastor. Well, that's not true. And I've had to correct this, I don't know, a gazillion-one times, because I was studying with the intent of becoming a pastor. I thought that God was punishing me for not becoming a pastor before, but I never actually became a pastor. I worked, as a teenager. I did the normal teen, working in the ministry stuff with the youth group, but nothing, serious. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night visitation, Wednesday night services, Thursday night youth group, then, weekend mission trips and summer camp. And if you've seen Jesus Camp, my summer camp was like that, only slightly more fun and slightly less political worship. But I have friends who are ex-clergy, though. Pastors, preachers, ministers, reverends. Some are more picky about the title than others, but a lot of them have joined the Clergy Project. If you're not familiar with the Clergy Project, I recommend that you Google it and look it up. My friend Jerry DeWitt was essentially the first person to shed their anonymity. The Clergy Project is an anonymous online community of current and former clergy people where they can go and interact. Because one of the things is, if you've dedicated your life to a particular religious view and served as clergy, and you find your way out, you may not have any other options for any sort of practical employment. There are plenty of ministers who don't believe but are stuck in the pulpit, and I will get messages from them on occasion saying, hey, I'm writing a sermon for this Sunday. I'm trying not to promote the religion, but to promote secular humanism and other things, and I'm figuring out how I can write a sermon that feels like what my Christian parishioners want to hear and care about, without dipping into the dogma, and instead focusing on people and interacting with people and how we can love each other and help each other. And everybody's deconstruction or journey out of religion is just a little bit different, but there's a ton of overlap. Well, tonight's guest is someone that I don't know. I mean, we just met a couple minutes ago, and I've seen video content from him before. But Darante Lamar is an ex-pastor who's producing content on YouTube with other former pastors and believers. And like me, he does shows on Sunday and Wednesday. So we should all be incredibly grateful that he shifted things around to come here and hang out with us tonight. So let's bring him in and get to know him on this. Should we go back to Christianity? What would it take? What are the benefits? How are you, sir?
I am doing wonderful. Super duper glad to be here, Matt. Thank you for having me on, man.
That was my pleasure. So did you grow up steeped in religion, or did you find your way in before you found out?
That's a great question. Like I describe the way I grew up as culturally Christian, which
Mm.
which means my family members identified as Christian, but they didn't go to church regularly. It was more like Of course, the older people went to church all the time, but my parents, my uncles, my aunties, they weren't really involved in church. They were just Christians by name only. My mother
Right.
was a drug addict. My father wasn't around. And so it was actually dysfunction that led me to the church. It was the fact that my family wasn't saved. And actually, I got involved in Pentecostalism. So they were casting out devils. And so I was like, well, maybe they were the people who could fix my family by getting
Mm.
all the devils out, you know? And so ultimately, that's how I got involved. And you would have thought that in a cultural Christian context, that my family would have been super excited when I got saved and got excited about God, but it was really more of a drain for them. And so it was just like, I really wish this never would have happened. I wish you would have never got excited about Jesus. Cultural
Was
Christianity
it a
seemed to be the
drain?
preference.
Was it a drain in the sense that you were clearly serious about something that they weren't serious about, and they didn't want to be? Because if you run around saying, making a claim of who you are, and you're not
Hmm.
really that, then as soon as you come up against somebody else who's like a serious Christian, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I thought I was a Christian, but I just went to church every now and then and tried to thank Jesus when I needed something.
For sure, it was definitely like my existence as an on fire believer felt
Mm.
like an indictment against them for just being believers in name only.
Mm. So you found your way in. You were dealing with stuff with your family, and you
Mhm.
were what kind of pastor were you? And wasn't it for like almost 20 years?
Yes, there were 20 plus years in ministry, and I went through a few journeys. I definitely started off as a kind of like in the holiness circles, the apostolic holiness circles, shifted over a little bit more to charismatic, which is still kind of holiness, but they're just a little more free flowing, have a little more fun. And then eventually I became what I kind of call the urban pastor,
Mm.
where it's just a part of the non-denominational movement, but the focus is far removed from theology. The urban movement of churches, they're the ones that are more like the seeker-friendly churches. So we took all the pictures of Jesus out, took the crosses out, took the flowers out of the auditorium, and church became more about a place of just helping people find their own relationship with God, which I think that's what kept me in the religion for so long, is because it was less dogmatic, less doctrinal, and in a way almost people centric, but still with that superstitious room of, well, when God says something, we all have to jump with it, you know. But that's where I was when I actually ended up deconverting, as I was a part of the urban church movement, which is the mega churches, prosperity movement, grace and favor churches. These are the churches that feel more like rock concerts than
Right.
hymnals, and I loved it. It was an excellent feeling, but I did get to the place where I was like, hey, the messaging is damaging, and that was the hard thing for me, is realizing that no matter how good I felt about these services, and these services were incredibly animated, and incredibly inspiring. But combined with the messaging and looking at my community as a black man, I was like, yikes, teaching people to depend on a God who's not going to show up in a community that's already broken and dysfunctional is probably not a great strategy. And by this time, I think it was the Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown things that were going on,
Sure.
and it caused a real wreck in me to say, like, I don't want to be pretending to help. I actually want to be helping. I got at that crossroads where I feel like I don't feel like I'm actually helping people by robbing them of their agency and autonomy. And I felt like that's what I was doing as a pastor.
There's a everything. I'm signing off on everything you just said. There's a process that takes place, and I'm just going to set it up outside of religion entirely to begin with. And that is,
Mhm.
you first meet somebody, you don't know anything about them. You and I are just meeting right now. We don't know nothing about each other. We hang out. You and I could end up being best friends. We could definitely go hang out or whatever else. But at some point,
Mhm.
we're going to have a disagreement. We're going to have something that we don't see eye to eye on. And if you put that in the context of a church, if you and I are both participating in a church environment and we both have the absolute best intentions, what we want to be are servants that help other people, guide them both in
Yeah.
the secular life and maybe give them some pearls of wisdom that we've gleaned while getting more pearls of wisdom from them, because we're looking at a community and this is what our view of Christ is like. That works out great right up until the moment where there's some point of doctrine that is incredibly important to one of us but not the other.
Yes.
And when we get to that point, it's a reason why there's 1,000 denominations that all identify as Christian. Because somebody at the First Baptist Church got pissed off at somebody else at the First Baptist Church, and they went and started the Second Baptist Church. And then somebody else said, well, I'm not that keen on the Baptist part anyway, so let's get a Pentecostal church and a Methodist church and all this. The fighting that goes on when you're in it, it's, oh, of course there's going to be conflict. The devil's coming at us. We're doing God's work. Things are going to be a little difficult. And yet everything about it feels right. And then something flips one day, which I'm getting back to what you said a minute ago. And that is that all of a sudden, this message that felt good, that we believed was good, we start to see actual problems in it. Because when the message is delivered and you're supposed to know by their fruit, and you see strife and disagreement in the church and people, and backstabbing and somebody committing adultery in the church or, taking money or not doing the ministry stuff at all. You see that we're all just people. And so why on earth would we continue spreading a message that it contains more than what we can demonstrate to be real?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely saw a lot of that.
How long ago did you start finding your way out?
2014, 10 years ago. It was literally during the Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown fiasco. I watched a lot of people in the urban church take advantage of the sensationalization of it with no real intention of getting involved and finding any type of answers. And that was heartbreaking for me. So it definitely, if I wasn't disillusioned before, I was definitely disillusioned then. But I often explain to people that my whole relationship with Christianity was a deconstruction journey. The whole time I was a part of the faith, I was looking for a reason to believe the faith while taking it on faith, And I think that's an interesting dynamic, because most people think like, no, when you become a Christian, you believe everything. And that just wasn't the case for me. I wanted to believe everything. But I also wanted that evidence, even if that evidence just would have been God speaking to me, just saying, hey, I'm real. So I spent those 20 plus years looking for God. And that whole time, it was actually a deconstruction process, because there were things that the first 10 years of my ministry, I was a healing evangelist. I was a person who cast out devils. And then I shifted away from that because I realized like, oh, God isn't really doing these things. And in most cases, this is kind of placebo effect that people are getting off of these neurological impulses that they're experiencing during these services. And it's temporary. It's almost like a misdirection thing. If you have a headache and I hit you in your back, your head is going to temporarily stop hurting. And so like we'd have these moments with people, but then I started feeling really bad for the people who didn't get healed. And so I shifted away from that. And so I spent my whole ministry shifting away from things that I thought were true. And then by the end, it was just like, listen, anything that's happened in your life, you had to make happen. Like you're spending your whole life giving credit away and then begging this God to finally approve you. And it was wreaking havoc on my mental health and just the way that I engaged in the world. And it was horrible. So 10 years ago, I made the decision to stop pastoring. I still stayed involved in ministry, but I came to the conclusion that I really no longer believe this, and I can't in integrity still get up in the pulpit and tell these people that I believe this is the right way. When not only do I not believe it's the right way, I actually believe that this advice is detrimental and it is actually robbing you of your own capacity.
Yeah, some of it seems kind of performative. I was a sincere believer for a number of years, and then I was probably a believer just giving lip service to it. When I left home at 18 and joined the Navy, I didn't give a shit about Jesus or church or religion. I still believed, but it was like I'm invincible. I'm young. I'm going to go out and, I don't need that. And it was me also running away from what I thought was a calling to the ministry. I was terrified of it. I was terrified of public speaking. I didn't want anything to do with it. And that's why later on I felt like God was punishing me. But in this performative aspect, if you have a couple believers who are in private, and I've had this conversation with Jerry and other ex-pastor friends of mine, if you have two honest believers in a conversation in private where nobody else can hear, they will admit to each other their doubts because they think that will help strengthen each other. And they will acknowledge that, when I say God speaks to me, I don't mean I hear an actual voice. I don't mean I'm hearing an actual message. I mean, I'm getting this impression that I feel is consistent with what God wants. And then you move it a step forward, and now you take that same person with their private admissions to another believer, put them up in the pulpit on Sunday, and all of a sudden the honesty drips away a little bit, and it's God spoke to me and delivered a message to me, and here and it's stated with that authority. And then you get people calling into shows like this, and I've asked, anybody who thinks they're getting message from God, my questions are always the same. Do you actually hear an audible voice, or is it internal? Is it a two-way communication where you're getting a message that you didn't know, that, whatever, or is it a feeling? And it's interesting listening to callers who will get to a point, they know they can't say, most of them, I hear an audible voice, because everybody thinks you're nuts when you say that. And also, evidently, nobody ever hears. There are people who may hear or think they hear an audible voice. But when we put that to the test, as I've tried to do many times, which is, okay, if God's answering you, go ask God what you should say to me. If God wants you to talk to me, if God wants you to present a case, if God wants you to tell your story, if God wants you to, present evidence or an argument like that, then if that's what he really wants, he should be willing to help you do a better job before you show up on a show that, hundreds of thousands of people might end up seeing, where you might not look like the best representative. And yet at every single point, both in the private discussion and in the pulpit and in communication with non-believers, I felt I was being honest in all three of those when I definitely wasn't, because I'm painting a different picture, when the reality is I don't think any God ever spoke to me, nor did I think any God had ever really spoken to me. And the amount of time that I spent, in prayer, on my knees, in a prayer closet, everywhere else, and getting absolutely nothing. If there is a God, it doesn't make sense. You look at, I've been doing this 20 years now. You've been out for 10 years, and you're still doing ministry type work. We're both preachers. We just,
that's right.
And it's, we're doing all that. And I don't ever feel like I'm even in the ballpark of dishonest here, because I'm allowed to say I don't know, and I'm allowed to say there are things we can disagree on, and there are things that we don't know. And yet when you're in one of those situations, especially when you have the position of being a minister, or being in a position where you are a mentor or help to somebody, or just, even the more devout of somebody in a couple, it's incredibly difficult to find what version of honesty, because it's all honest and none of it is. How did you struggle with, because I hate the concept of your truth. This is your truth. No, there's just the fucking truth. There's not a your truth and my truth. There's a truth. What we have is different experiences of it, but we lie to ourselves, and we take that, oh, this is my experience, and so we try to portray it as if it's truth. How much in the 10-year time did you start changing your views away from Christianity from, throughout the entire process? Or was it, hey, I don't believe this anymore, and then more things changed? Did more things change after the 10-year mark than before?
Oh, it was okay. So it was a mixed bag, right? One of the biggest things that started happening that is I started paying attention in my counseling sessions with my members. Because I had members who, like you said, on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights were like, hey, the Lord spoke to me, and they're getting up in front of church and they're really audacious, authoritative, and very, very concrete in these experiences that they're having, that I know God is speaking to me and he's giving me this word. But these same members, when I was counseling, they're like, Pastor, why doesn't God speak to me? And so that became really hard for me to reconcile, because I'm like, okay, which version of you do I believe? Do I believe the version of you that is here on Sundays saying, God is speaking to me? Or do I believe the version of you that's in my office on Tuesday saying, Pastor, why doesn't God speak to me? And then I realized for the first time, and that was around 2012, that for the first time, my members are under the same pressure to pretend that I am. And that kind of shook me a little bit, because it's because at first I felt mad. I'm not even gonna lie. I kind of felt like that righteous indignation. Like, why would you pretend? Why would you lie? And then it became like, well, dude, what have you been doing? And why have you been doing it? You've been doing it to protect this idea of God. You've been doing it to protect this idea that you have this relationship with God. And so, to bring that back around to the question, by the time 2014 came, it was immediate for me. Because I'm thankful for my members for that, because they were like a mirror for me. They're like, it was like being able to see that, man, Darante, they're doing the same thing on Sundays that you're doing on Sundays. You're speaking up for this God who will not speak up for himself. You're putting on this show for this God who will not put on the show for himself. And so if you want to live honestly and you want to live integrally, then this God is going to have to start speaking for himself. And that was literally my last prayer with God. My last prayer to God was, if we're going to have a relationship, you're going to have to treat me like Adam. We're going to have to start over from scratch, and you're going to have to reveal yourself to me. But from this moment on, I'm not telling anybody that I heard anything from you. That most likely just came from me. And it was just finally realizing that, the voice I'd been following all along was my own damn voice.
It's, granted, I didn't have, I wasn't a pastor at a church. I didn't have a congregation, but I was part of a congregation many times. And what I see is, in these services, in and out of the services, the pastor has a role that they're going to play. And it is one of expressing confidence when necessary and empathizing with doubt when necessary, whatever it takes to maintain someone's compass pointed at the cross if they start to waver. And so you're going to engage with, kindness on occasion. You're going to call out things on occasion and rebuke people for things. You're going to point it out. And so the pastor, if they're honest, is performing even in the absence of clear direction from a God. The congregation feels a similar pressure to perform for the pastor, both to stand up and sit down and sing and do these other things, but also to give the right answers, to yell out from the back with an amen and a hallelujah on occasion, to be your punctuation. It's a concert. It's a performance play. And I don't mean to say that in the sense of, oh, they're all faking it. I believe everybody is, right, or most of them are sincere and sincerely wrong. And you mentioned something in an episode I watched earlier today that really struck with me. You're talking about when people are likely to change their mind. And it comes when you either have an abundance of safety or an abundance of feeling unsafe. Whereas when you're just in the status quo and everything's going, why change anything? But when you are in a position of good safety, that gives you permission to question and doubt. And when you are in a position where you're feeling unsafe, that leads to the desperation. Because something has to change the risk versus reward analysis. Otherwise, inertia maintains and we just keep going. And I would probably still be a Christian now if it hadn't been for being in a position for a while where I felt incredibly safe, and then getting to a position where I didn't feel as safe and I genuinely thought God was punishing me. I thought it was a brilliant take on that in the conversation you had. When you're talking with other ex-pastors, what do you find is the most common connection? Is it a frustration with a God, frustration with the church, or frustration with the entire picture of life, where either they get to a point of incredible safety or unsafety? What are you finding in their conversations?
By far and large, the majority of the ex-pastors that I engage with, it's definitely the extreme unsafety mark that tends to push them over the edge, because you do sacrifice a lot in ministry, and you tend to do it graciously and gracefully all the way up until the end. And for a lot of them, it's getting to that point of no longer feeling safe within their own thoughts, no longer feeling safe with their members anymore, no longer feeling safe with their families. And that finally puts them in a place where they can just kind of be honest. And then now, once they're at that point, the biggest common thing is they all seem to be really happy, primarily because, and I don't know if it's because of the way because of the type of work we do, but it's, once we're on the other side, it's a relief, because it's like it's almost like living your whole life trying to push a rock up the mountain, thinking those are your only options. And then the moment you realize that, oh no, okay, this God likely isn't real, then you can just let that fucking rock go. And so, like, really, like, the majority of my ex-pastor friends now that I get to engage, they feel incredibly liberated. The tinge of frustration that they feel is, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I've spent my whole life modeling myself to be this type of person. And it's like, what do I do with that now? And it's not easy. I know for me, that was the most terrifying thing, is like, being a pastor for 20 years is a black hole on your resume, and in the rest of the
Right.
world. And so it was terrifying, but a lot of them are making waves, and it is because of things like the Clergy Project, and also because we are becoming a little bit more of a progressive society, where people can see that pastors aren't just preachers and public speakers, but they're event managers, they're community organizers. So if they can learn how to translate those things, which is typically what I kind of help do, then they can find space. But it is difficult, it is scary, and it's that double-sided coin. You're terrified and liberated at the same time. It's like being dropped off in the wilderness after being in slavery. You're happy to be free, but it's like, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah, there's different types of pastors, and I've talked with my friends before about which labels they like to use: pastor, preacher, minister, reverend, etc. And some of them are more picky than others. But I don't. I look at it just for ease. There's probably more categories in this, but I would put most of the pastors and preachers into three categories. The first category is people helpers. These are people who genuinely just want to help other people.
Yeah.
Then there's the power hungry, who need to be, I gotta be the dude in the pulpit. I gotta be the one saying it, because if I was the one sitting out in the pew and somebody else was telling me what to do, I know I would feel convicted and irritated, and I need that power stroke. And then
Yes.
the third category is just the performative, and they can come from a lot of different directives. And I think that while I was a sincere believer at the time, I think if I had gone into ministry at the time, it would have been more performative, because don't get me wrong, I have an obsession with learning and I would like to help people, but I'm not driven to be the compassionate people helper person. And I don't give a shit about being the person in charge. What I
Yeah.
care about is me, the people close to me, the world. And as my vision begins to branch out from me out, there's a performance aspect to it where that was all I knew. And for members of the
Yeah.
Clergy Project, who, we both touched on, somebody's in the ministry for 20 years and finds out, I don't believe anymore. Not only do I not believe anymore, but I think this is problematic and harmful. But what do I do? It's not just you're right, it's a black hole on your resume, but it's you even if you included that on your resume, it would be, okay, what skills do you take to a new job? Well,
Yeah.
you might be able to do some managerial stuff, but I know a lot of pastors where the church has their own treasurer and secretary and all that stuff, and they're downloading sermons off the internet,
Yep.
and just putting them forward. Now, I would imagine people are having AI just write their sermons for them. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find that there are pastors in the pulpit right now who on Saturday night put a Q into Chat GPT and have it spit out a 25-minute sermon, so that they can, praise Jesus. Bless you all. Thank you all so much for coming here. I wanted to talk today about, and when you watch videos on YouTube that are written by AI and they're read by AI, there's pronunciation issues that
Yes.
it'll say certain things wrong. My favorite is listening to pastors who did not write their fucking sermon because they can't pronounce the stuff that's in it, and there's no way you're going to be questioned on it.
Well, I was actually a ghostwriter for preachers for a while, and so I did write other preachers' sermons. And that was one thing that used to aggravate the hell out of me, is that, like, man, if you're gonna use my sermon, at least get the words right.
Right.
But you'd see it clearly that I'm like, dude, you could have just simply Googled the word. Google has the pronunciation right there for you.
There's another thing, everybody's got a different rhythm and different pacing. AI is getting Jimmy Snow sent me a message that was an AI a script that he wrote that he had the AI generate his voice. You almost can't tell. It sounds exactly like him, and it's adding breathing and it's adding spacing. It's getting to the point where we do a call-in show here. We're going to get to calls here in just a minute. But someday we're not going to have any good reason to believe that the person that we're talking to on the phone is real.
For sure.
There's going to be real-time voice-generated AI stuff. And I just wonder, how do you, I don't know what we could possibly do to fix that. I have no way of knowing. Like, generally, there's people who call just to troll right now. And I'm okay with it. A long time ago, somebody said, hey, don't you know that person that keeps calling you they're a troll? They don't really believe that. And I'm like, no, because I can't read minds. And I think it would be wrong and rude for me to pretend that I can. Now, don't get me wrong. I can pick up on some things when people are making it more obvious. But if I can't, I only am able to work with the information I have. And so as long as the person on the other end of the phone is bringing up salient points to either that everyone can learn from, or that we can correct so that everybody can learn from the correction, I really don't care if they're a troll or AI or anything else, because the important thing for me is to get better information out. And it doesn't matter to me whether it came from AI or a troll, some jackass who wants to call in and be like, oh, well, you're gay, homie. Cool. Thanks so much for showing me the love of Christ there.
Right. Oh, that's
I'm
hilarious.
wondering,
I get that with my beard a lot.
Yeah. I'm there. The process of, I wasn't even called deconversion, or at least I didn't look at it as deconversion when I found my way out. It was just, I remember one day I was riding home from work with my roommate, and I said, I think I'm kind of agnostic now. And he goes, oh, cool. And just kept driving. And it was, that moment stuck with me, because that was the first time I dared tell anybody that I probably don't believe in God. And I knew it was going to be safe telling my roommate, because he'd been an atheist for years. And the fact that there was nothing, there was no surprise, no judgment, no, really? No, we don't even need to discuss it. It was just, okay, cool.
Wow.
And that was huge. Oh, evidently my Google device thinks I'm asking it to find a video or something.
We need to go over this. Let's talk shop.
Hey, Google, stop. What the hell is that? So anyway, when you found your way out, what type of community did you have left? Because the communities that we try to build as pastors or as Christians, we're doing that a little bit in the secular community, but we're at a huge disadvantage, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money and a lot of energy and resources. and so many atheists just find themselves alone. What kind of support network have you had over the last 10 years after finding your way out and working out as an atheist?
For the past 10 years, my support network has been my wife and my kids. And literally that's where that circle ends. For the past 10 years, I had to wrestle with a lot of family dynamics of realizing that, like, yikes, my family really doesn't like people who aren't Christian. You know, they have no problem with people who don't live like Christians. But the moment you no longer have the label, it's a problem. And so literally there was no community support system for me or my family until we started building it. And just to be clear, we live in Alabama, so that does make things a little harder. but it definitely it pushed my passion. I often tell people that one of the biggest things that the past 10 years have taught me is what it feels like to feel like there's something wrong with you just being you, and that you have to hide you to make other people comfortable, which is what I did for the past 10 years. And it gave me an extreme amount of compassion for the LGBTQIA plus community, because I realized, like, that's a horrible feeling, to feel like that every day you have to pretend to be something that you're not. And that literally I had people who I had told that I was not a believer anymore. And because they just really wanted me to be, they would just treat it like it was a fad, or treat it like it would go away. Anytime we'd have family events, they try to make me pray over the food because, hey, you're the former pastor. Matt, it was an incredibly isolating and dehumanizing experience. And it was really the thing that kind of decided, because my past 10 years, I spent silent as an atheist. I didn't talk about it outside of close friends and families. I didn't talk about it on my YouTube. I even still accepted preaching events and just tried to taper my messages. But I finally came out on the other end because I realized, like, it was a killer. It was a killer for me. My network had died. My community had died. And I'm like, what am I holding on to for? What am I holding on for now? And so it was finally the beginning of this year where I just, like, fuck it. I'm just going to start talking about the things that are important to me, because that's really the only way I'm going to find community. And that was the thing for me, is that you don't get community if you don't feel safe. And that's what a lot of people who step away from the faith are wrestling with. It's, even though there's community out there. Someone asked me a few months ago, like, why didn't you go to the clergy project? And it was a valid question. And the truth of the matter was, I just didn't feel safe. Even though I knew that I was an atheist and I knew that I was going to walk this walk, I didn't want my name to show up on a website one day, or I didn't want to be in an interview someday and somebody saw it. And so it was incredibly terrifying. And it took me 10 years to finally realize, like, hey, if you want community, you're going to have to be active in building community and connecting. But yeah, it was just my wife and my kids. That was my support system for a decade.
Well, I tell you, we'll have to do this again for sure, because I could sit here and talk everything religious with you for hours and hours. But we got callers waiting in. It's a call-in show. So let me remind people, if you're not familiar with the Clergy Project, you can Google. But the Clergy Project was founded in part by Daniel Dennett, Linda Lascola, Dan Barker, and Richard Dawkins as a way of allowing people who are current or former clergy who no longer believe to interact anonymously. They don't all stay anonymous. As I mentioned, my friend Jerry DeWitt was the first one to kind of shed that anonymity and come out public and wrote a book, Hope After Faith. But it's a great resource, and it is incredibly, to my knowledge, it's incredibly safe and supportive. One of the nice things is that even though I'm not former clergy and I'm not a part of the Clergy Project, if you join the Clergy Project, you can reach out to others and say, I'd really like to talk to so-and-so. And there are a number of counselors both in the project and outside of the project. And so I've had several different people who've joined the Clergy Project who are just like, hey, could somebody connect me with Matt? And then we end up having a bunch of conversations. Some of them have become my friends, but this is now tied in with, Recovering from Religion Psychotherapy Project, and all sorts of resources, so that if you are someone who is a member of the clergy and you no longer believe, you have options to find your way out that can be safe. On that note, we have a number of callers, including some theist callers. And let's, if you're ready, and by the way, Darante, you jump in whenever the hell you want. You talk over me,
Yes,
shut
sir.
me down, whatever, because I get to do this all the damn time. So let's try this. Brad in Australia is a theist who says you can't use materialism for a transcendent experience. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show. You're on with Darante and Matt.
Hey, Matt. Hi, Darante. Yeah, thank you so much for taking my call. I am an artist, originally from Chicago and Grand Rapids, Michigan. But, and I've heard a lot of the debate. I'd just like to say two things, I guess. So the first one is, let's say I'm sitting in front of a Mark Rothko painting, right? And you can't experience that from a thumbnail. You've got to be there. And you're falling into these layers, and you're having this. Let's say you're at a museum in front of a Mark Rothko painting, which is a large field painting, abstract, with layers and layers of beautiful color. You're pulled into this sublime experience, right? And you can't get that from a thumbnail. You actually have to be there in front of the thing. And then a materialist walks up. Why are you staring at that? Why are you telling me you're having this transcendent experience of something beyond human language? This transcendent, sublime experience. And he goes, well, I don't see anything special. Takes some scissors, cuts out a piece of canvas. I'm going to examine this under a microscope. Where's the physical evidence of your experience? Hey, there's just paint here, fabric. What I'm trying to say is, if God is limitless and beyond human category and beyond human comprehension, if he exists, and you ask for physical evidence, evidence is a limit. And you're trying to put a limit on something limitless, and evidence has to make sense. So
it's not a limitless
God is
thing.
defined by what it's not.
Brad, this just sounds like an excuse for why people don't present evidence for God.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
you're trying to
put the wrong. Wait a minute. You're trying to put the wrong tool to. There's different forms of knowledge. There's experiential knowledge. There is aesthetic knowledge. Why are you so obsessed with the physical when it's so? You've gone nowhere with all your debates. You never will. You have to actually go out and experience this. It's like you don't.
Brad, stop.
Brett, how do you separate the material from the? How do you separate the physical from the experiential? Like, if you can experience something, how is it not material?
If you want, all right, look at you've got your quantum mechanics and things like that, which are no one understands, but it's accepted. Zizek says when we talk about the absolute, there is a limit to human language. There is a limit where it starts breaking down into paradox. When you like a Zen koan, I'm trying to explain it. Like a Zen koan, what's the sound of one hand clapping? Let's say. What you do is you have to break through those material limits to have a glimpse of the absolute, that transcendence. So it's when things start becoming paradoxical and not making sense, that's when you're actually getting toward the real deep truth.
Oh, no.
How do you confirm
that? You're not allowed for that. No, you don't tell us to. You don't tell us to wait a minute, ever, Brad. Brad, you're not going to tell us to wait a minute. Darante has a question, so stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
My apologies.
So you say this leads us to a deeper truth. How do you confirm those deeper truths?
Hello?
How do you confirm the deeper truth of experiencing a painting? There is.
I don't believe, Brad.
That expands your,
Brad, listen. Yeah. I haven't established that there is any deeper truth to seeing a painting. Your caricature and your straw man of the material. Let me finish. Just hold on. We sat here and listened to you. Your caricature and straw man of a materialist coming up trying to cut a portion of the painting out to try to find it and saying, oh, it's just material, is a cartoon. Because as someone who fits that category, I have no objection at all to the notion that sitting down in a museum looking at the actual piece of art is a different experience than looking at a screenshot or a photograph on somebody's phone of it. But that's not because necessarily of just the art. It's because you are in a moment and in a particular place, and the thing is framed nicely, both with the frame around the art, but also everything else. And you are sitting there with the purpose of looking at this and engaging in some introspection. And there's nothing about this that I see any reason to think is beyond material. But if you say when things stop making sense, that's when you're closer to a deeper truth. Darante's question holds. How do you demonstrate that there's a deeper truth?
So again, you are going back to, we've had this, let's pretend that we've actually had some kind of experience that's beyond words. And then you want to say, well, how do you put that into words to confirm it? And I just have to make sure that my logical side
Brad, that's not what I said, and that's not what Darante said. Are you going to answer the question that we asked, or are you going to keep making up a different question to try to avoid answering that one? How do you demonstrate when you think when you think that people have reached a point where they are engaged with a deeper truth? How do you demonstrate that that is in fact a deeper truth and not just nonsense?
Right, because it is so subjective. I would say that if you had, I don't know, if you put up a survey and rated the feeling of oneness and love afterward, that might, like, I would never do that. I wouldn't bother with all this crap because it is so personal. And that
you don't care about what's true,
life.
Do you?
Right.
If you cared about what was true, Brad, you would look at Brad. If you care about what's true, then you care about methods of discerning truth. And Darante has asked you, what method for discerning this truth do you have? And you have repeatedly failed to even attempt to answer how you can show that it's true. Well, you keep saying you have the answer, but this is chance number 6. Brad, by all means, keep talking over me. How do you think that's going to go for you?
Oh man.
Ahead,
so Brad, just so I'm clear, your kind of definition of transcendence kind of sounds like a feeling that you can't put into words, right? Am I missing that?
Very much. It's instinctual knowledge.
Now, if it is a feeling, isn't that material? Feeling exists within the natural world, not the supernatural world. So if you're feeling it, this is a material. But like even if it's in the realm of knowledge, isn't that still in the realm of the material? Otherwise, and this is what I like to point out here. For example, if something is supernatural, that means it is not natural. And so if it is not natural, that means things that are natural cannot interact with it. So how are you having an interaction with it? Well, but you use the word transcendence, and you use the word the word material as if this transcendent experience is somehow other than material. Yeah. You even went as far as to say that you can't put this into words, but the example that you opened this up with, you used words to explain this feeling. But then you even went further and aligned it with a feeling, not something that is outside of the material experience. And I think sometimes this is the mistake that people make when talking about the material world. They somehow think that the material world is separate from the world of emotions, when emotions exist, the emotions and feelings exist squarely within our physical and material world.
Can I speak now?
Yes.
Of course.
I didn't say yes. So when we're talking, it's really hard to talk about things that are beyond language, isn't it? So I
don't know. I don't try to talk about
demonstrated that it's beyond language.
I don't know of anything that's beyond language.
Exactly. So I would suggest that you go out and seek mystical experiences.
Brad, do you realize that you're talking to two people who were both Christians for decades.
And that's the problem.
Oh,
I don't think that.
I agree.
One of the reasons
that's the first thing you said, Brad, that I agree with.
There is some mysticism in Ignatius, where you imagine yourself in the Bible story, etc. But I don't think that. What I always sought out as an artist was that connection. That it's like I want more. Push it. And I wasn't getting that from Christianity. But I don't think it's fair to dismiss all of mysticism based on some urban church.
I don't dismiss all of mysticism based on an urban church. I don't dismiss all of mysticism based on an urban church. I do not accept mysticism because it does not meet its burden of proof. This is why Darante and I are asking you to meet your burden of proof. If you're going to come in and make claims that here's where deeper truth is, you need to be able to demonstrate that. Otherwise, it's just blah, blah, blah.
No, because you are.
Yes.
You act like there's only one form of knowledge.
No.
Scientific materialistic.
Yes.
It's not.
Yes, I act like this with regard to one form. No, Brad, I act like this with regard to one. Brad, shut up. I act like this with regard to one type of
You don't talk
claim
to me that way, sir.
I don't. I'll talk to you however I want. You want me to hang up on you, or would you like to sit there and shut up while I explain this to you?
Go fuck yourself, asshole.
Okay. Got anything else you want to say, Brad? Goodbye. Here's the thing. I say that with respect to any claim to knowledge that that is not accompanied by a way to demonstrate that knowledge is in fact knowledge. The present thing Brad doesn't understand is you can be artsy fartsy and look for the transcendent experience and be convinced that you've discovered a deeper truth. And maybe you're right, but none of us have any justification to believe that you're right until you show us how to demonstrate it.
That's right.
Until then, it's just blah, 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 Brad. That's it.
What's always funny to me is the people who have these deeper truths. Not only can they not demonstrate the evidence of how to get to these truths, but they can't demonstrate the utility of these truths. Okay, so what if I say, yes, these deeper truths you have, what can I do with them? How can I use them? What can I build with them? What can I engineer with them? And the answer is always something within the realm of emotions. Well, it just makes you feel better. And it's just always amazing to me.
It blows my mind that, I get it. There are things that some people have difficulty putting into words. But everything that we know and understand that we can communicate with other people is because we have some way of describing it linguistically.
Sure.
It doesn't matter whether you're speaking English, Spanish, Hindi, whatever. There are some things that don't translate particularly well between languages, and there are some experiences that are going to be difficult to describe. We talk about being filled with the Spirit.
Yes.
When I was a believer, if somebody said, I was filled with the Spirit, I knew exactly what that meant, or at least I thought I did. As it turns out, I may not have had the same understanding that they did. And so you get 100 people in a tiny little church, and somebody starts talking about being filled with the Spirit, and the person next to you is feeling elation, and the person over there that just got done singing's got goosebumps, and the person over there, because of the music and the crescendo, is feeling nearly orgasmic, and they're wanting to move and they're wanting to dance. And the easiest thing to do is to say, look at what's going on here. Clearly, this is beyond the humans, and clearly there must be a spirit moving through us. Until you actually go out and learn about psychology and drugs and all kinds of things that give people experiences. And like Darante was saying, if you want to claim that your feelings are true, you can, but you have to demonstrate it. And how do you show that how do you even show you're accurately describing the real experience that you're having? And if you want to say, well, you can't really describe it, it's beyond words. Okay, then I guess we don't have anything to talk about. I don't know why you called. Because I need people to tell me what they believe and why. And if all you're going to do is say, oh, when things seem paradoxical and they stop making sense, that's when you're at a deeper truth. Really? Why, for what reason would I ever think that when things are confused and paradoxical, that I'm somehow on the verge of a deeper truth? What's a deeper truth even mean?
That's
I
scary.
don't know. We got more theist callers, and maybe some of them will have better models of truth understanding. Dennis is calling from Canada and says the Bible is enough evidence for God. So, Dennis, you're on with Darante and Matt. Dennis, you're calling through the web client, probably on your phone. You're going to have to tap your phone to wake it up. There you go.
Hello.
Hey, Dennis, you're on.
I just want to say that the Bible, I think it's enough to prove the God's existence. Since the accuracy of archaeological and I think historical evidences for
The
just like the
accuracy of
Pontius Pilate
archaeological and what?
and historical evidence, just like
Where's
the
the
Pontius
historical
Pilate.
evidence? Where's the historical evidence for, oh, I don't know, anything in the first few chapters of Genesis?
I think not all, but there are parts of the Bible that has historical evidences, like the Pontius Pilate. I think he existed.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
And
hold
also
up. Dennis, can I ask
ahead.
you this? Can I ask you, but before we move on, are you saying that the Bible has evidence for God, or the Bible has evidence for people who are listed in the Bible? Because evidence
I
that
think-
Pontius Pilate existed wouldn't be evidence that God exists.
And there are a lot of historical evidences, not just Pontius Pilate, right?
Right,
And
but does any
I
of
think
that
it corres-
historical evidence point to the existence of a God?
No, but I think it's going there. I think it's
Well,
the
if
historical
it doesn't,
accuracy.
if it doesn't point to a God, then why did you say the Bible's enough evidence for God? If the Bible doesn't provide evidence that points to God,
But I think it cites real events,
Okay.
and
you ever read Spider-Man comic books?
but the difference is it is made for.
Did you ever read Spider-Man
entertainment.
comic books? Did you ever read Spider-Man comic books? Okay. Where does
Yeah.
Spider-Man live?
I know it's there are the places are
New York.
real,
It's
but
New York.
I think the difference is
It's New York.
it's made for.
It's New York.
Yes.
The answer to my question is, I don't know why let me pause for just a second, because I would really like to just stay in a good, calm mood all day. For everybody who's on hold, I've done this for 20 years. I know what I'm doing, and I'm asking questions specifically to further a conversation where we might get more clarity and where the people watching will get something out of this. So if I ask you a question, just answer the question I'm asking. Because I guarantee you, after so many years of doing this, I'm like a dog with a bone. And if I ask a question and you don't answer it, we will sit here and spin our wheels on that same question for 5 or 10 minutes. So just answer the question that you're asked, and then we get to move on to something else. So when I say, where does Spider-Man live? The answer is New York. And then the next statement for me is, New York is a real place. Does the existence of New York in any way confirm the existence of Spider-Man? And the answer, of course, is no. So the existence of Pontius Pilate does not prove that the Bible's other claims about a God are real. So how can we get to that part? How do we get to, here's the evidence that God is real? Dennis?
Yes.
How do we get to God is real?
Yeah. I just mentioned this Pontius Pilate, but there are a lot of things that are real in the Bible, and I just also want to cite that just in science, but the first law of thermodynamics, right, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed.
Did
So
God create
I think,
anything? Did God create energy?
We don't know that, but that's what I'm saying, that it cannot be created nor destroyed. I think.
Yeah, I don't know, Dennis. I don't know that you understand the first law of thermodynamics, nor do I know why the first law of thermodynamics is remotely relevant. You called in to say the Bible is enough evidence for God. And then when Darante asked you about it, you said it doesn't provide evidence for God. And then after I tried to redirect you, you come back with the first law of thermodynamics. What does that have to do with the Bible or God?
It's because I think it would be impossible for an energy to exist on its own, right?
Is God
It's
energy?
it's contingent. I don't.
Um,
I'm not sure.
Does God exist on his own?
Yeah, but yeah, probably, of course.
How do you know?
But because it's a divine being, it's an omni
What's
being.
that mean? What's that mean? And how do you know that the divine being exists?
I think the problem here is you always ask for these evidences, and the fact is you cannot just give any evidence for everything, right? We cannot know
Yes.
everything.
I don't believe things without evidence. Why do you?
But because we have called we have a word which is faith, right?
Sure. Faith is
I
the
think
excuse
that
people give for believing things when they don't have a good reason. I wait for a good reason to believe things.
I'm not sure about that because we have the Bible. I think that is the ultimate evidence for the existence.
Okay, so let's start there then, Dennis. Why do you believe the Bible is the ultimate evidence?
I think just
Who
like
wrote
any
it?
other,
Can we start there? Do you know who wrote it? You know how it came to be?
there are a lot of books in the Bible, right? So they're the one who wrote that.
Okay, who are these
66 in some
people?
versions.
Why do you trust these people who wrote it?
Because they are contemporary people at that time, and I believe they are guided by God with those as they write those passages.
Did they claim to be guided by God, Dennis?
No, but I think it's understandable in some way, right? If you
How
come to
so?
think of
How
it.
do you get to that
Why?
understanding? If they didn't make that claim, Dennis, how do you get to make a claim that they didn't make?
I'm not sure, but I think that's what it is for me. I think
So,
they
so
have
just to
they've
be
been
clear,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
just
David.
to be clear, you're not sure how they get to make that claim. You're not sure if God is energy, but you are sure that the Bible proves God. One of these things is not like the other, Dennis. There's a break here. And so you have a lot of areas that you're not sure about. So why not just be honest and just be like, well, I'm not sure if the Bible proves God or not. I just believe that there's a God. Why not take that stance?
Yes, but we cannot discount the archaeological discoveries, right? The Dead Sea Scrolls.
What
That was the old
archaeology
manuscript.
discoveries have what archaeological discoveries have proved God? That was the question we started with, Dennis.
I think we're forgetting the fact that we have found the oldest manuscripts of the Hebrew,
Okay, how does that
and
prove
this
God,
was
Dennis? See, remember that was the first question I asked you. It was saying, so what you're saying is if I prove that there was somebody named Moses, then this means God must exist. Do you realize how that's not a logical conclusion? That there could be a manuscript exist. I can write a manuscript about God and you can find it. That still isn't evidence for the actual God's existence.
yeah, I understand, but I think these are the pieces to the puzzle, right? I think these are the tiny pieces of the puzzle that um, would lead to the proof that there is a divine being, and I think
So you're saying
also
we
the
haven't got to the proof yet.
no, I believe there is. I am convinced that there is,
So
but I'm
why
just saying
can't
it's
you
for the
just
people.
speak to the proof? Like Dennis, just give us the proof. Don't tell us what you keep thinking. Tell us why you're thinking. That's what we want to know. We want to think like you, bruh. We want to believe like you believe. So you tell us, you give us the evidence. Tell us, no, this is the evidence instead of saying, well, I just think this could be. Or just be honest and say, I don't have the evidence. which is what Matt was saying earlier when you mentioned faith. He says, yes, we're familiar that people use this word faith in absence of evidence. And if that's your stance, then fine, but you can't call in and say there's proof, and then your proof is faith.
Of course, I understand, but I think for me, everything in this universe, I think it's contingent. It should be
Okay.
it should be
Dennis,
dependent on something else.
This is really getting weird because, and I promise you, I'm not trying to be a dick, but this is absolutely going to sound dickish. You're not making much sense, and you're talking about things and stating things that are either factually wrong, like when you talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls are fragments, and they are copies. They are not originals. And by the way, they do not include Christian writings. They're Jewish writings, the Old Testament stuff. There are fragments from Hebrew scriptures. There are fragments from the Second Temple time. But none of them, even if we had like original signed copies of, let's say, a fraction of the book of Isaiah, that would not demonstrate that a God exists. It would just demonstrate that we had the original signed autographed copy of part of Isaiah. It wouldn't tell us whether or not the content of Isaiah was true, right?
Yeah.
So why, if there's a God, if you're right and there is a God, why does God not equip you and every other believer with solid evidence-based arguments? And instead, you guys call in and you say, yeah, but what about the Dead Sea Scrolls, which don't prove that there's a God?
I could not answer that question, honestly.
I appreciate that.
But-
And that's cool. On that note, Dennis, I got some other callers waiting who probably think they may be able to answer that question. So I appreciate you calling in. I think you've got some more work to do before either myself or Darante are likely to be convinced.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Dennis.
Dead Sea Scrolls are a weird thing for me because people want to act as if, oh, here's the original that God preserved and hid in a cave, except that that's not at all what this is. And
Right.
by the way, if God wanted to preserve this, he wouldn't need to put fragments in a cave.
Yikes.
God could show up right here. God could materialize both in the room with Darante and in the room with me at the same time and hand us each originals right now. I mean, is that not within the realm of what God can do? The God that can create an entire universe can't do something like that. And yet that never happens, ever. Just like God has never been confirmed to heal an amputee in the entire history of the world. There's even a website. Why won't God heal amputees? You hear about all this stuff. Oh, God did this. God helped me find my car keys. God helped my kid go to college. God helped my grandma's glaucoma. God helped cure me of cancer. God delivered me from alcohol. But God can't heal an amputee.
Yes, sir.
Come on. Let's see how we do here. This one, a little bit of sidetrack here. Devin's calling from Illinois. I ran across Devin in a Facebook discussion where he said something about atheists and the laws of logic. And so I just suggested that Devin call in, and Devin has called in. So Devin, welcome. You're on the line with Matt and Darante.
Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Sure.
The reason why I called is, like you said, you and I had a little discussion online, and it got into about the laws of logic. And I think what the previous callers have missed as it concerns atheists is that you guys are not the standard of knowledge. You're not the standard of truth, because you have a worldview on an ontological level, on an epistemological level, and on an ethical level that cannot make sense of the experiences that you have. And you have to borrow from Christianity, essentially, in order to make sense of them. And one of the evidences of that is your appeal to the laws of logic.
No, I
So
accept the laws.
This is the problem. You guys are sitting here saying, show me evidence. Show me evidence. But you're not the standard. You're just an atheist. You have to justify why atheism is the starting point upon which you're going to.
Here we go. I'm going to mute you because you don't know how to have a conversation. So get ready to get completely schooled. There is, to our knowledge, no solution to the problem of hard solipsism and no way to confirm the laws of logic, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. There's no reason to think that they require a grounding, and there's no reason to think that there could be a grounding. Whether or not I have a grounding for logic doesn't change whether or not logic is reliable. I'm not borrowing from Christianity. The starting default position for the claim some God exists is to not accept that claim until that claim has met its burden of proof by providing and meeting a standard of evidence. The default position for every claim, not just religious claims, not just supernatural claims, not just God claims, the default for every claim is to not believe it until it has met its burden of proof. Whether or not my worldview can give an explanation for how or why logic works is secondary and immaterial to whether or not logic actually works. The default position establishes a burden of proof, and for people claiming that Christianity in particular or a God in general exists, they have a burden of proof, period. Can you meet it?
You're not the standard of what the burden of proof is. That's the whole point. Atheists.
Okay, let me try this again. I'm going to mute you. I am absolutely the standard of what I'm going to be convinced of. However, I did not say that I was the standard of what the burden of proof is. I explained to you what the burden of proof is. It's established for very good reasons, because there are, let's say, 5 different God claims. There are many more than that, but let's just say there are 5 God claims. If the default position is to accept all of them until they're proven wrong, that leads you into a position where you are in contradiction, where you are holding mutually contradictory and exclusive positions at the same time, which is unreasonable and illogical. Instead, we reserve judgment on all 5 of those God claims until one of them has met its burden of proof. That's why I established what the default position is with respect to a claim.
But you're not the standard of proof. Once again, you have to justify why atheists make sense of the nature of logic, the fact that it's...
I'm going to mute you again, Devin. I did not say that I was the standard of proof. What I said... Here, let me ask you some questions, Devin. Let's see if we can figure this out.
Cannot make sense of invisible entities.
Oh, okay, you were just talking the whole time that I had you muted.
Talking to himself.
You're just talking to yourself. Let's try this again, Devin. Let's try and make this a conversation between the 3 of us. Devin, let's say that you have a God belief. Yes, let's say you have a God belief, and my sister has a God belief, and the guy down the street has a God belief. Should I believe all of your claims?
No, you shouldn't believe all of our claims.
Which one should I believe and why?
You should actually recognize the fact that there's an ethical problem here. That's what all of this goes to. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. The issue isn't that there's no evidence for God. It's the fact that we have an ethical problem in ourselves as human beings. We are in sin. We live in...
Okay, I'm going to mute you again, because instead of actually answering the question and trying to have an honest, reasonable conversation, you've decided that it's time to preach. Well, while I wasn't a preacher, I can preach my fucking ass off, and Darante was, and can definitely do that too. I don't think we need to go head to head with the 3 of us preaching. I think you need to think and listen, because I've done this for a while. There are 3 God claims competing. Which one should I believe and why?
I answered your question. I said, you're not the standard by which you can make those God claims.
No, sir, you did not. I'm going to mute you, because I have zero fucking tolerance for liars.
Yep.
You have not answered the question. You have not attempted to answer the question. Instead, you tried to redivert into the, we're living in sin. Well, I don't believe I'm living in sin. I don't give a shit what your concept of sin is. I don't care what you think your God's concept of sin is. Sin is a bankrupt concept. I'm not talking about sin. I'm talking about whether or not there's sufficient evidence to conclude that a particular God exists. So we're going to try this for the final time, Devin. If I hear 3 competing God claims, which one should I believe and why? Let's try this again.
You would investigate each one, but you have to recognize that you're not the standard for whether or not each God claim is true, because you have to appeal to a standard above yourself. That's the answer.
The standard that I appeal to is logic and evidence. When what I
you have no basis for logic as an atheist. How do you know the laws of logic exist?
Shut up, Devin. A question I asked you was,
This
which
dude.
God should I believe and why? And you once again failed to answer it and instead went off to
I
say
did
that
answer
I
it.
don't have a foundation for logic. So, Devin, you're going to get one final
I
chance.
did answer the question.
No,
You just don't like
sir,
the
you
answer, man.
fucking liar. Goodbye. Goodbye. You're a fucking liar. I have zero patience for liars.
Man.
What the question
What's
we asked
funny
was,
here-
which one should we believe and why? You did not even
Mhm.
get in the ballpark of which one we should believe or why. You are so
man.
mired in your narrow, fear-driven belief in a God and how you're living in sin that your brain has stopped functioning correctly. God belief has poisoned your mind. Because if we weren't talking about God, and I said to you, Devin, hey, there's 3 people here that all tell me that they have a special prize for me, and if I give them $1, they will give me a prize worth $1 million. Which one of those should I believe and why? Well, you would investigate all of them, but you have to realize that you don't have a foundation for which to investigate. Yes, I do. The entire world runs on the scientific method, on logic and reason, on us investigating. Everything we know about the world has come from a process that does not in any way rely on appealing to the supernatural. Science cannot appeal to the supernatural. And that's how we know virtually everything of substance that we can identify as true. Sorry, Darante, I got sidetracked because Devin wouldn't play.
No, this is that was hard. That was hard to listen to. Like, yikes. What killed me is that he kept making these claims that, hey, you're not the standard of truth, while at the same time asserting that his particular worldview is the standard of truth. And just because he's not using those words, he doesn't realize that's what he's doing. He's saying your worldview has to align with mine, and if it doesn't, you're wrong. And that's hilarious.
It is wild. We're going to take another call here from Edgar in Utah is calling in to tell us to get back to Christianity. So that was a topic for today. Excuse me. And I had specifically asked, should Darante and I get back to Christianity? What would it take and what would the benefit be? And so Edgar's calling in to explain to us, I think, why we should get back to Christianity. Edgar, you're live with Darante and Matt. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Not too bad.
Awesome.
All right. Nice to meet you guys. I'm going to ask you to be a little patient with me. I'm not that good at speaking English. I'm a Spanish speaker. So
your English is better than my Spanish, and I took 2 years of Spanish, so
for sure.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Matt, Darante, I hear all the people that have called you and told you about the Christianity and all that, and I'm kind of sad to hear that. Well, people is not that knowledgeable about God being a real God, a living God. So, yeah. My point is like, go back to Christianity because I don't know if you guys believe life after death, and if you believe it, maybe you need to know that there is only 2 destinies that we are gonna be ending up on. So I'm guessing that the best option is to be with our Father.
Edgar, do you have children?
Yeah.
Yeah. You love your children?
Mm-hmm. Very much.
You show up for them? You show up for them?
Yeah. Every time I can. Yeah, I can be there for them. Yeah.
I'm guessing you probably hug them in the morning. Probably see them off to school.
Definitely. Yeah. They're the love of my life. Yeah.
The God you just called Father has not done that for 8 billion people.
Well, in a sense, he is for me because, I have peace in me. I can tell him everything that I feel when I feel bad, when I feel worried, when I struggle on myself. I can tell him, and he comes down in a sense to me, like comforts me, like gives me like the strength to keep on going, to
That is
be.
beautiful. So he comes
Mhm.
down and he comforts you, but he won't come down and heal amputees.
Well, the thing is that we, as humanity, we decided to be apart from him, and this is like how do
Okay,
you
hold
call
up. Just hold up. I gotta catch you there. I gotta catch you there before you go there. So you're basically suggesting that anybody who God has not comforted, he has not comforted because they turned away from him. Am I understanding that properly?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So then what about the babies with cancers and AIDS? What about them?
Well, that is the thing that we need to understand, that God creates those kind of situations so humanity can stand together and fix the problem, because he gave us, well, we are made in his image, and at the same time we have his knowledge in a sense, not completely, because we're still humans and he's a divine entity, but we have the knowledge. We already created cell phones. We are like communicating this way because of technology. And well, let's talk about the spiritual stuff. And if the devil wouldn't be, how do you say, if the devil wouldn't have any kind of control over big pharmaceutical companies.
Okay, hold up. Let's bring it back a little bit, because we're going back. So your idea is that God comforts you, he gives you peace, which, let's just to be clear, I can talk to my teddy bear and get that same type of peace, but something that would actually demonstrate God's existence, you're saying the excuse that he doesn't do things that would actually prove his existence is because of either sin or because he wants to use that for the devil or something?
Well, you stated something about kids having cancer, right?
Just real quick, Edgar, do you feel good that God will give you peace but won't heal kids of cancer? Do you feel like that makes you special?
No, I feel sad for
what
humanity.
you gave to us. That's what you gave to us to convince us. You said the reason I know that there is a God is because this God comforts me. But you have to understand that we live in a reality where we know the same God that you claim is comforting you is not healing children who haven't done anything wrong. So why would that make me believe in a God where God will comfort you, which is easy, but will not heal children who did nothing wrong? And by your own admission, you as an adult, you could be a sinner for all I know. So why is God comforting this sinner and not doing anything for these children who are dying? And just to be clear, God has healed no children of cancer.
Well,
so why
you
does
don't
God
know
find you
that.
why does God find your comfort more important than the lives of those children? Can you tell me how that's a good father?
I trust
So
in
you would
him.
only
I give
be
my
a
life
good father to your children if they trust you?
Yeah, because they said the word says
Edgar.
that. The word says
Edgar, you're
that.
telling me if your children didn't trust you, you'd stop being a good father to them.
He gave the right to be his children if we accept Jesus. So if the father of this kid that is having cancer trusts in him with all his heart, with all his soul, with all his strength, he can get a miracle from God.
First of all,
but at the end of the day, it's
Edgar,
yeah.
Is it possible for someone to trust God with all their heart and all their strength, everything? Is it possible? And if they don't, if they come up with only 99% of all their heart, does that mean they're not going to get a miracle?
Oh, no. What I meant is that everything is under God's will, because,
so God's going to do
honest.
whatever he's going to do. So it's pointless to ask God for a miracle because he'll either do it or he won't, whether you ask or not, right?
No, because as a father, if my son my daughter asks me for something, I'll be more than happy to give it to her. And
Okay.
I like that.
Why isn't God feeding the people who are starving and begging him for food every day?
We go back to the first point about the kids with cancer. Is because of humanity. He creates this kind of a scenario.
Are you saying that humanity is more powerful than God? God can't feed the hungry because we're more powerful than him?
No, humanity is capable of creating the right scenario for people that is struggling all over the world.
Yeah, but that's not what I asked. I asked why God isn't healing the people, why God isn't feeding the people who are begging him for food. If your kids were begging you, Edgar, wait. If your kids were begging you for food, would you tell them you guys can sort it out yourself?
No, I will work.
No, so that's why we're asking you, why does God do that?
Because he gives us the ability, he gave the humanity.
Why are you a better father than God?
Yes.
No, not at all. No, I'm not a better father
than God. You know why? Because nobody's ever seen a God. Nobody's ever interacted with God. Nobody's ever demonstrated that a God's ever done anything. God's never healed an amputee. God's never fed anybody. God couldn't give me a hangnail or cure a hangnail. And God doesn't demonstrate at any point that he cares about anyone or that he exists at all. By definition, you are a better father than God.
Well, like I said, if you let me finish.
Oh, fuck you.
Like I said.
I've been sitting here quiet, letting you talk. How dare you? When I throw in just one little soliloquy, you're just going to be, if you let me finish. That's pretty fucked, Edgar. I think you should apologize for that myself.
No. Look, humanity has fallen away from God because...
Edgar, I think you should apologize for that.
We prefer to go into the darkness instead of going to the light.
Edgar, I think you should apologize for that.
By ignoring the situation that...
Is there a reason we shouldn't hang up on you? If you're going to accuse me of not letting you talk when I did nothing but let you talk, and you're not going to apologize for it, why should I keep listening to you?
Okay, I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
Like I said, I apologize. I'm sorry. Like I said, people don't look on the bad situation that other people is going through, and when people ignore the situation that other people is going through, darkness grows and keeps going.
Edgar, I have to call this up because Edgar, remember, you're defending why God ignores. And you're literally saying that when people ignore, it creates darkness. But God ignores to get people to do it. So now, if you were to use that same standard that you're using against people, saying that when people ignore the sufferings of people, it is wrong, why can't you realize that that would also mean that if God is ignoring the standards of people, especially if you believe that this particular God is a father, albeit absent, how do you believe that is a good standard? That if this God is not answering his people, is not being with his people, is not showing up, that he's doing the right thing, but then if people are following his example, you're literally saying if people follow God's example and ignore the sufferings of other people, then they're wrong. Which is, you're still stating this thing that our job is to be better than God. Like that is really odd, you, Edgar.
I muted you while this is going on, Edgar, because we can hear the show in the background. I need you to turn the show off in the background because it's coming back through the phone. But please.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, he's not ignoring us. He's there for us all the time. He's there.
He's not there for the cancer babies. We just talked to that. He's not healing the amputees. He's only there for people.
Let me do an imaginary scenario.
Find their keys.
Edgar, let me do an imaginary scenario. Let's imagine that you came home and you walk in, and in the living room, one of your kids is being beaten and sexually assaulted by another person. What would you do?
ask God for the forgiveness of that person, mercy for that person, because he's gonna have
You wouldn't
really
intervene
bad.
to stop it?
If I'm seeing the event, yeah, I'm gonna
Okay,
do
so
it
if you came in and
everything
you
that I
saw the
can.
event, if you came in and you saw
Okay.
the event, you would do everything in your
Okay.
power to stop it, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Was God watching that event before you walked in the room?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why didn't God stop it?
Because he had a purpose for that event to happen.
Oh, so God's
Yeah,
okay
he's-
with someone being beaten and sexually assaulted because it works for his purpose.
Yeah, well, it kind of makes us stronger. I
Okay.
wouldn't know my real
I'm going to
strength
stop here,
if I
Edgar,
wouldn't.
because I'm not going to be able to maintain my cool while someone is suggesting that an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God has a plan that allows someone to be fucking beaten and shut up. That allows someone to be beaten and raped without intervening because it makes them. Shut up, Edgar.
Well,
now, I'll just hang on. I'll just click drop because I don't need you talking over me, and I don't need to hear anything else from you. You're another example of what Darante and I are talking about, where you've managed to take this belief, and when God is saying nothing and doing nothing, you still believe, and it's all for a purpose, and it helps us, and it's just for growth. You are making excuses. You are like the single mother that lies to their kids about why their father is absentee.
Yes, sir.
Kids deserve the truth. And they deserve to not be beaten, and they deserve to not be assaulted. And if you or any God says that somebody needs to be beaten and assaulted in order for your plan to come about, you're an immoral monster, unworthy of worship, unworthy of even a moment's thought. You should be locked up to save you from hurting yourself and others. But that's just me.
Wow, like that was damn near triggering, Matt. You know, just it's always amazing to me how far believers will go to defend like just the absolute, just the worst things in the world. Like this is an SVU episode at this moment, and he's just like, yep, God is using it for his good. Oh, but I've been there. I used to live there, and that was rough.
Let's start. I got more theist callers, but I want to take one atheist caller that's been on hold since before the show started. So Mario, pronouns are they, them, in Texas, says we don't take metaphors seriously enough. How you doing, Mario?
Hey, I have to say I have autism first thing because of how I talk and stuff. Anyway, great to be talking to Darante. Love your videos.
Thank you.
You guys are kind of literally doing the yin and yang right now. Notice that. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to talk about some story from my personal life about how a time where I metaphorically had godlike powers. Just to illustrate my point, if that's okay. So,
yeah, try and get to it. We don't have time for a long story, but
okay.
yeah, I just need to understand what your point is about metaphor.
Okay. All right. So everything in this story is going to be really weird. You're just going to have to bear with me, but it's all mundane fact.
I don't need any preamble. I just need you to get to it.
All right. So I've been a pedicab driver for a couple of months, and I'm like getting ready for work on Friday, and I'm taking my underarm bath, and I'm blow drying my underarms, and I feel something hit my underarm, and I look on the ground, and it's a roach lying upside down, and you know, like that only happened because of like a series of like improbable coincidences. You know, the roach had to be on that specific spot on the ceiling, and he had to fall at that specific time, you know. And a roach can't live if it's upside down. But I've seen them flip themselves right side up, so I was like, you know, I'll wait for it. So I go to work, and they told me to go home because I had a meltdown, which is, you know, I felt it was slightly discriminatory. So I went back home, and well, the roach was still upside down, but it was still alive. So I flipped it over myself because, you know, my attitude wasn't, if it dies, it dies. My attitude was, if it dies, I will mourn him.
So,
okay,
Mario,
that's...
you're telling me a roach hit your armpit, fell down, and you left it there and went off and did something else and came back and it was still there.
Yes. Well, it was still alive.
What's the point of the story?
Well, if you look at it from the roach's perspective, if a roach could have a perspective, it would report that it was caught up by, you know, some kind of wind, and it encountered a being with godlike power, and it could have died, but it, you know, the being came back and saved its life.
Okay, so your moment of godlike power was when you came back and flipped a roach back over to allow it to continue living.
Sure. Well, we all have
what is it about
more
that
power
story,
than we think.
What is it about that story as a metaphor that means we need to pay more attention to metaphors? Because
we
I don't
all
have
have
to take
more
this the wrong
power.
way. I couldn't give less a shit about that roach right now.
we all have more power than we think. We're just like, we need to be paying attention.
Okay. Thanks, Mario.
Yeah.
Can I just like to expand on this a little?
I don't think I need to expand anymore on it. I'm good.
All right. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
That was interesting.
Actually, so I was talking with Darante about this earlier, that Arden and I, for those who don't know, Arden and I run Epic Loot Exotics. We work with a dozen different species of snakes, 5 or 6 different species of lizards. And because of that, we also breed the food for those animals, which includes rats, mice, ASFs, but also dubia roaches, mealworms, black soldier fly larvae, stuff like that. I'm not squeamish around bugs or anything else, but if the point is that we should pay more attention to metaphor, I somehow missed the part of that story that showed the value of metaphor. But if the whole thing was, here's a story that gave me a perception of how I had more power than I thought, cool. I like when people start to realize that they perhaps have more power and control over things than they may have thought. But also I like it when people start to realize they have less power and control over things than they thought. So the real key for me is, I would like people's concept of how much power and control they have over things to be accurate. And so if they're undervaluing it, I want to build them up. And if they're overvaluing it, let's take it down a bit.
I like that. I didn't know where that call was going.
We got 3 more calls before we're going to get to super chats for the day. By the way, we're going to be reading all super chats over $10. And if you have questions for Darante in particular about his time as a pastor or his work afterwards, by all means, you can get that in the super chats. We'll be reading those shortly. There are also, this is one of many programs here on the Line Network. And oops, there's my Discord right there. So tonight it's myself and Darante, but tomorrow at 2 p.m. is a transatlantic call-in show with Arden Hart and Alexander. If you've been called transphobic and you're proud of it, you can call in and explain why. And if you've been called transphobic and you're embarrassed by it and would like to have a better understanding of it, you can call in and they can explain that to you. If you have questions about trans rights, trans issues, and things like that, it's a perfect opportunity to talk to 2 real live trans folks about their lived experience, what their life's like, and why you think they should or shouldn't have the rights that they think they should have. In addition, this weekend, Arden and I will be at North American Reptile Breeders Convention in Dallas, Texas. You can look that up. It is one of the biggest ones. If you're a reptile fan at all, I'm not just doing this to advertise us, but this is a big deal. There's several NARBCs. There's one in Tinley Park and Schaumburg and St. Louis, and then this one here in Dallas. It's a great way to spend part of a weekend, to take your kids, to get them to see lizards and snakes and spiders and creepy crawlies and all the stuff that you don't want them to bring home, but you really kind of do. But it's a good learning experience. And if you're somebody who collects or wants to have pets like that, that's an opportunity. And that means that on Sunday's show, I will be working, but the Sunday show at 2 p.m. is going to be Aron Ra and Paulogia. And the Sunday show after dark is going to be Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels and Jimmy Snow at 7 p.m. Then Monday, Skeptalk is going to be Aron Ra and Natalia Reagan. Tuesday's Chewed Gum is Eve and Alyssa. And next week on the Hang Up, I will be back with Eve Was Framed. I promise. And Arden just smirked when I said that. We've got Gus calling from the, is it Gus or Goose calling from the Netherlands? My apologies if I said it wrong. Oh, if you're calling on the web. Oh yeah. Sorry. What was it?
Gus is fine. Goose.
Awesome. You said here you want to talk about deeper truth. So have at it.
Yeah, well, I think it was about 30 minutes ago, something like that. Darante, he said like everything that is supernatural must be materialistic.
Well, no, not quite. No, I said if in order for you to have an experience with something, the thing that you're experiencing must be natural. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to experience. Supernatural would exist outside of the natural, which is why I actually have a hard time with the concept of supernatural, because how would you even know that it exists with you being a natural entity?
But does it have to be materialistic then? In your paradigm, let's say.
Well, I think, and I could be wrong, but because I've been down this road a whole bunch of times, let me see if I can clarify this. I don't think it's fair to say that if you experience it, it is natural instead of supernatural. I think the point is, if you experience it, you have to be experiencing the natural manifestation, even if the ultimate origin was supernatural. And how would you know if the ultimate origin was in fact supernatural or not?
Absolutely.
So let's say spirituality. Do you consider that as supernatural?
I don't know what spirituality is.
Every description I've heard of spirituality has existed within the realm of the sociological, psychological, or neurological. I haven't heard any experience that goes outside of those realms yet.
So let's say beside of your own consciousness.
That would be neurological.
Yes, but it's not located inside your body.
It's not?
No. Can you tell me where it is?
Well, you made the claim of where it isn't,
we're
so
talking
where
about
is
an
it if you know where it isn't?
No.
We're talking about an experience we're talking about an experience that my brain is having, right? Or did I miss something?
No, that's subconsciousness. You have consciousness. It's like, what you think, what you feel. When you feel something in your gut, it's not in your brain, right?
I don't feel things in my gut. That's a figure of speech.
Yeah,
I mean, don't get me
that's
wrong.
not what the gut does.
When my stomach is upset, I can feel that. But I mean, the sort of thing that we describe as a gut feeling is just, that's a metaphor. And as we've seen, I'm not that impressed with metaphors. My brain does my thinking. My brain does all of my experiencing. And my brain takes all of the sense data that I get and creates a model of reality for me to experience.
Okay, I can go with you in that. Let's say the soul of the human body.
I don't believe in a soul.
You don't believe in the soul?
No, what evidence is there that the soul? Matter of fact, not only do I think there's insufficient evidence for a soul, I think there's hard scientific evidence against the notion of a soul, because everything that we attribute to a soul has been identified as a product of a brain, and it's malleable. If you go and you operate on my brain, you can change my preferences, my likes, my personality, my memories, my desires. You can change literally everything about me. If you sever the corpus callosum, you will divide the brain in half, and there will be two different people in that brain communicating independently, one through language with the voice, and the other could be through writing. I recommend looking up V.S. Ramachandran, gave a really good talk about this ages ago, where after doing the corpus callosum, the two parts of the brain could communicate independently, and one part of the brain was a God believer, a theist, and the other part of the brain was an atheist. And so, since every part of my character, of who I am, is a malleable function of my brain, what room is there left for a soul? How is anything that is me? Where's the evidence that anything that makes me me survives my death?
Is there proof of what you just said?
Yes.
Scientific proof, because
yes, I even gave you the scientist's name. V.S. Ramachandran does a lecture about this, about the splitting the corpus callosum in patients that they're suffering from seizures. It's a way to stop grand mal seizures because of a defect in the brain. Which, by the way, why would there be a defect in the brain? Oh, which, by the way, if in fact there was any God, why on earth would God give us faulty mechanisms for engaging with reality?
Yeah, but now he's jumping. But
yeah, sorry.
No problem. I have this moment as well. The reason why I think, and let's say the soul, it's not, we don't have the tools to, how do you say it? Let me see. Wait. Yeah, we don't have the means for testing. Scientifically, we cannot test it if in any certain, let's say, the quantum physics of, let's say, the human soul.
Hang on.
It's not located. It's not located.
Well, why did you mention quantum physics? First of all, I'm not aware of any evidence that points to a soul, but I'm definitely not aware of any evidence that points to the quantum physics or the quantum mechanics of the soul.
Maybe it's not the right how do you say it example.
Okay, let's just ask this. Let's just keep it at a pedestrian level. None of us are scientists here. I pointed you to a scientist. You can go check out V.S. Ramachandran's lecture later. What reason do you think there's a soul that can survive the body?
Well, there's multiple.
You know what's funny?
That can survive the body.
I'd be willing to bet $25,000 that if you went to every call I've ever taken where I said, what evidence do you have for X? The number of people who start with, well, there's so many, or well, there's multiple, instead of offering one, is staggering. Like, I bet the number of people who start with, well, there's many, or well, there's multiple, vastly outweighs the people who start and say, here's the evidence. So it's really weird to me. It's really weird to me that somebody can be suggesting that they have good reason to believe there's a soul when I ask for evidence and be like, oh, there's just so much evidence, but okay, give me one.
Can I respond?
Yeah, as soon as I'm done talking, that's the way it works.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So what's the evidence for the soul?
I was just waiting. What do you consider as evidence?
It depends on the claim. It's so weird, Goose, that you say you have reason to believe. I ask what the evidence is. You tell me there's so much of it. And then I say, give me one. And you're like, what do you consider evidence? It doesn't matter what I fucking consider evidence. You're the one that believes it and thinks you have evidence. What evidence do you have? If I agree with it, I'll accept it. If I don't, I won't. But it shouldn't matter to you at all what my standard of evidence is if I've asked you why you believe it.
Okay. because without the soul, the body cannot function.
Prove it.
Has there ever been a dead body who can function?
Oh wow! Like literally?
A dead body.
Okay.
So basically, you're saying that a live body has a soul and a dead body doesn't have a soul. Prove it.
That's why I asked you, what do you consider as proof? Because
No, I'm asking.
let's say,
No, Goose. You just asserted. No. Stop talking. You just asserted that a dead body doesn't have a soul and a live body does. And I asked you for evidence. I didn't ask you to make another unfounded assertion. So let's try this again. Without making another unfounded assertion or asking me again what evidence I consider, because I'll tell you right now, you know what I won't accept? Just your fucking say so. So what evidence do you have that a live body has a soul and a dead body doesn't have a soul?
There is no scientific proof because we don't have the tools to literally, let's just say, like...
Go ahead, Darante.
Wait.
No, we're not waiting.
Bruce,
You just
hold up,
admitted
hold up.
failure. It's Durante's turn.
No, I'm not finished.
So I got to ask you this. You're finished for now, buddy. Let's have this. Listen, if there are no scientific tools, if there are... We're just
okay, I'm going to mute you
buddy.
since you don't know how to stop talking when other
easy.
people are talking. Go ahead, Darante.
These folks don't know how technology works. So listen, if you do not have the scientific tools to demonstrate that there is a soul, how do you jump to the conclusion that there is a soul? What if you're not using scientific tools to base your belief in that there is a soul? What tools did you use to come to the conclusion that a soul exists?
Because I can speak, I can think for myself, and we can say like, oh, that's the brain that does it, but who makes decisions? Who chooses for me to make left or right decisions, front or forward, backwards, up and down? It's not the brain. There is something in control in my body that has a free will that can decide what I'm going to do.
How do you know it's not? The question was, what's the tool that you're using? So you've made more claims. You've made more claims is, I think, so that has to be it. It can't be my brain. So what tool did you use to say it's not my brain? And here's the sad thing, Goose. Even if you came to the conclusion that it's not my brain, that does not automatically jump to it must be a soul. You'd still need to have that line of authority, that line of logic that leads to that conclusion. And so far, there are two things you've demonstrated. That number one, you don't believe that there are any tools to interrogate the soul. And number two, you just think there's one. And so the question that we're wanting to ask, because, hey, maybe we want to believe in a soul too. If I wanted to believe that I had a soul, what tools could I use to interrogate and demonstrate that I have a soul? And if science has already demonstrated that my brain can do everything that you're claiming that a soul can do, why would I need your soul?
I don't believe that there is evidence for that. But okay,
but we've already demonstrated that you don't use scientific tools to get to evidence. We've also demonstrated that you don't really have an understanding of what evidence is. So I wonder, Goose, if we did have evidence, would you actually receive the evidence, or would you just do what you've done throughout this call and just say, well, I don't believe that? Because also you've demonstrated there is no evidence for a soul, but you do believe that. So obviously your belief isn't attached to evidence, Goose. So that seemed a little disingenuous to me there.
No, because what for you is evidence may not be for me evidence. But I will.
But you haven't provided any evidence.
Evidence is facts that are uniquely consistent with a proposition. Evidence for a claim is the set of facts that point strongly towards a particular proposition. You asserted that your brain isn't capable of making decisions. There must be something else other than your brain that makes decisions for you. How did you reach that conclusion? That's what we've asked.
You know what I find disturbing is that when you people talk and I want to talk, then you say,
you know what I find disturbing? What I find disturbing is that we keep asking you questions and now you're just going to whine. Would you answer the question, or you do want to whine? You get to do one or the other, but not both.
I want to answer that question, but I want to answer it in my way.
And answer the question. When you asserted that your brain is insufficient to make your decisions, and there must be something soul-like that makes your decisions for you. What evidence did you use
Yes.
to reach that conclusion?
Why do there has to be, let's say, what evidence do we
That's what I
humans have?
thought. That's what I
No.
thought.
No.
No.
Listen,
Goodbye. Goodbye, Goose. Goodbye. We're done. I'm done playing. I don't think you're
English is not
serious.
English is not my
I don't
best
care if
language.
English is your language. You've had plenty of time to sit here, and we keep
You wanna
asking you
respect
for
other
evidence
people,
for
then
why
go
you
away.
believe it, and you keep
Kick me out,
dodging,
do
which is
whatever you want,
disrespectful
whatever
to
you want.
us. It's disrespectful
Do
to
whatever
us, and
you
it's
want.
disrespectful
I
to
was
all the other
respectful.
callers who are waiting. Either put up or I will shut you up.
Have a good life.
I do have a
Go in
good
peace.
life. I have a great life. Goodbye.
Like, right? I love my life.
You know what's great about my life? I'm not expected or required to believe something without a good reason.
Yes,
I
sir.
am this captain of my own ship as best as I can be. I don't get to control everything. Things are going to happen to me. My teeth were bad. I'm getting oral surgery. I had a heart attack. I had a triple bypass. Medical science has
Wow.
done great things for me. I'm healthier than I've been in years. I feel great. But when somebody says, "Hey, do you think there's a soul?" My answer is no. Not only do I not think there's a soul, I think there's good reason to think there is not a soul. I think many of the claims made by religions are ultimately unfalsifiable and untestable. Like, how do you prove a universal negative? How do you prove that there's not a transcendental God that exists beyond space-time that is hiding from all of us? You couldn't possibly. But when it comes to something like a soul, the proposition is that there's some sort of thinking thing that isn't my brain that somehow controls my brain. So here's a weird thing. In that split brain experiment where you end up with two different individuals communicating with one brain, what if you have that and you don't know it? What if you are only half of your brain thinking that you are just you, and your other half of your brain is a completely different identity that for whatever reason can't communicate and just feels trapped and is walking around?
Yeah.
What that shows, when you smack somebody in the head or perform a medical procedure on their brain such that their entire personality and identity is rebooted, where they have full retrograde amnesia, they don't remember anything about their past life. If that person was a Christian before, are they still a Christian? Is the soul saved and just unable to pilot the ship of the body that it's in? The soul's still saved, but it's just the brain malfunctioning. And if the brain can continue to drive the body, not doing what the soul wants, but just doing whatever the brain wants, does that count as sin on the soul? Nothing about the math of souls, nothing about salvation, none of it makes any sense. And there isn't evidence for a soul, but there's strong evidence that my brain, in fact, is the thing that's making the decisions, because when that operation happens, my decisions and who I am begin to change, as they do every day in every way. I don't make the same decisions now that I made 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 50 years ago. How weird is it that I can go back more than 50 years now? But that's the way it works. Anyway, we got a couple calls to get to.
Man. Awesome.
Final theist caller for today. Brian in Illinois is calling in to tell us that we should believe in God because it's logical. I'm so happy. I just did a video about kind of the basics of logic and how much I hate the word illogical and prefer irrational. But Brian, welcome to the show. You're on with Darante and Matt. How is it logical to believe that a God exists? Which God?
That's actually not. I was saying that the principles that Christianity believe in are logical, and I actually agree with what you just said. Illogical compared to irrational. That's actually a good observation. But I was actually calling in for, like, for example, abortion.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, okay.
Oh, so I was going to say, so logically, abortion is murder. And we can walk through it if we...
No, it's not logically murder. Murder is a specific legal concept.
Yeah, and that's I was actually going to go through it if you'd let me.
If you'd let me finish without interrupting, I was going to point out that murder is a specific
You interrupted
legal
me, but that's cool. Go for it.
Whose show is it? Do you think it's really going to be good for you to fucking start a interruption measuring contest right now? Do you think that's going to fucking go well for you at all?
Yeah, because my life's amazing, so you can hang up on me like I give a shit. So.
Okay, bye.
Well, done.
That was 43 minutes of your life you spent on hold that you're not going to get to actually make a point or defend your God belief or demonstrate that it's logical, all because you wanted to be whiny? Wow.
I'm not whining. I'm just saying.
Are you a Jesus follower?
Yes.
Do you think Jesus is proud of you right now?
Yes.
Cool. Enjoy.
Huh.
All right. We got 2 more calls to get to, and then we're going to do supers. But David in Canada, pronouns are he, him, has a question about being a skeptic. So welcome, David.
Hi, Matt. Hi. Sorry, I didn't catch the other gentleman's name.
Darante.
Darante. Hi to both of you. Hi, Matt. A bit of a short time / long time fan of yours. Been watching you for about the past 2 years, and I just had a question about your personal life, and please just tell me to, shut up and go away if you don't want to share. But I do understand that you're somewhat of a very open person when it comes to speaking about yourself.
Mostly, yeah.
Basically, yeah, sure. Basically, the question that I had was, is like exploring skepticism and practicing, skepticism in your everyday life, did it affect you? Did it affect your personal life? And the reason that I asked that is because I understand that you were married in the past, and this obviously could be completely unrelated, but I just wondered, like, for myself, I've started practicing skepticism a lot more in the past 2 years, and I found that my decision making and my logical thought processes have gone up quite substantially as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, I grew up in a very conservative household, Christian values, very conservative values. I was a Matt Welsh fan. That's how bad it was. And then suddenly
I was a
started.
Rush Limbaugh ditto head.
Yeah, sure. Through logic and reasoning, and I was like, hang on, this guy is actually like speaking a whole lot of trash. Like it's some of the stuff he says is just like terrible and doesn't make a lot of sense. So like my life has improved in terms of clearer thinking, being kinder to others through that logic and reasoning. Sorry, a bit sidetracked. So the reason what I wanted to ask was, does being skeptic affect your personal life and your personal relationship with others, like your family and your friends? And did it maybe affect your relationship with your previous partner?
Well, it definitely impacts relationships. I mean, I'm an atheist because I'm a skeptic, and so that has cost some previous relationships. My skepticism had zero impact on my relationship with Beth. Beth is still one of my best friends. We still talk frequently. We're divorced, having nothing at all to do with skepticism or anything else. She's a skeptic and an atheist just like me.
Okay. Yeah, because I have noticed that because I've become a lot more open-minded, like my family has noticed, hey, something's changed about you. The things that you didn't question in the past, you're now questioning, and you're a lot more open to. And it's just sometimes it can bring about points of contention. Like, for example, my sibling has, you would say, bigoted views, and I would agree on, for example, LGBTQ plus people, and we've bumped heads many a time on things like that. And like, I've heard you say that you do this because it's extremely important, and 100% respect that. But I just have this lingering fear that this road that I'm going down of becoming a skeptic through practicing proper logic and reasoning, through making good decisions. It has like this other side that, you know, people around you may not like, because it's not always comfortable to you know, spearhead a situation. And I think that's that's the reason that I'm asking you that.
Yeah. So if you're a skeptic and you're surrounded by people who aren't skeptical, you have a decision to make. And that is, do I keep the peace or do I take a stand? Because if I'm around a bunch of people who are being unskeptical and they're, for example, anti-vaxxers, I'm probably not going to stay quiet. If I see people, you know, but if people are praying at the table next to me at a restaurant, it's not like I walk over to their table and start harassing them about, hey, do you guys have any proof that your God exists, or that he's listening to your prayers, that he's going to do anything about the food? How do you know you're not going to get sick anyway? Why are you sitting here praying? You know, and by the way, why did you stop praying? Because the Bible says pray without ceasing. So you shouldn't even have stopped praying when I came over and interrupted. I would never do anything like that. However, there are times where the fact that I'm a skeptic, that makes me look at things a certain way, can be problematic in conversations with people, because a lot of people, and I'm not saying like these aren't bad people, I'm not talking about Christian dominionists or anything else, but a lot of people really hate conflict. They hate conflict more than they love truth. I love truth more than I hate conflict. Despite what people think, I do not enjoy conflict. I'm good at doing this type of thing because I've done it for so long. But I'd rather there was never a raised voice, never a moment of frustration, and never a moment of dishonesty. But I care about the truth more than I care about whether or not your feelings got hurt. And that might make me less likable than some other people. I still think that it's consistent with humanistic principles, although I definitely fuck up on occasion. I probably have fucked up tonight. This is probably not a single show where I haven't fucked up. But at the end of the day, as long as I've done my best to defend truth, I'm comfortable with that. And has it cost me relationships? You bet. But it's not skepticism that did that, because you can be a skeptic and not engage and push back with people. It can be entirely about what you're willing to accept. There's a difference between being like a skeptic and a skeptic advocate, or a skeptic evangelist, which probably fits. Sure.
Yeah. There was a debate that I watched with you a long time ago with I think the gent's name was Clint, and he put back at you quite hard. He said, you know, Matt, being a skeptic is not about being a cynic, you know, and I agree with that. Because skepticism may come across as cynicism at times in the heat of the moment. And thanks for letting me know, because I'm actually newly married, and it's obviously not a road I want to go down. I would like to avoid that at all costs. So that's the reason that I just wanted to ask.
Does your partner value skepticism, or are you already finding yourself kind of bumping heads?
No, she does. She was actually way better than I was a you know, like I said, I grew up in the church. I served as an altar boy for 2 years. And she was much more an atheist. Well, I mean, she is an atheist. Sorry, that's an absolute statement. So yeah, no. It's actually made our relationship better, dare I say, that I'm able to, you know, converse with her through using skepticism and through using better logic and reasoning. It's just a lingering thought that I've bumped heads with my family on many occasions. And like I've said to them, I respect your guys' right to practice your religion. I genuinely do. That's a right that everyone deserves. But it's just personally not for me. After what I've seen, after what I've learned, it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. I like my mother said to me, why are you not a Christian anymore? And I said, because I don't have a reason to. If someone asks me, I genuinely don't have a good reason to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you wanted an answer from me. I want an answer from Darante. When you're engaging with family and friends, and how do you navigate the line between confrontation and keeping the peace?
Up until this year, I just subdued me, kept me in check. So I just smiled, took it, and just said, okay, all right, they're gonna be how they're gonna be. But as of this year, I literally stopped giving a fuck, and I became that advocate, that evangelist. And so I'm like, hey, if y'all get to be whoever the fuck y'all are when y'all around me, I'm gonna be the same. And we're gonna, and it was literally my worldview. And I don't advocate this for everybody. This is me. I'm gonna put my chips on the table, and you can either take them or leave them. This is who I am. This is how I accept you. And whether you're a Christian or whatever else, I'm going to love you and treat you with all fairness and all respect. If you can't do the same for me, I don't fucking want you in my life anyway. And it's been free for me. I let go of my father, my mother, like literally my whole family. It's literally, Matt, earlier when I said it's my wife and my kids, that has been my world. And beautifully, that is the healthiest I have ever been. Because I had to realize that it wasn't, and it's kind of like what you said, Matt, it wasn't just my skepticism. My skepticism helped me realize that the same people who were too unhealthy to love me because I wasn't a believer, these same people had issues loving me before that even happened. This was a dysfunctional situation to begin with. And my skepticism gave me the freedom to kind of say, hey, look, that's y'all's problem, not mine. And if that's something y'all want to wrestle with, you do that on your own damn time. I'm going to live free and live fun.
There you go. I'm telling you, David, first of all, cherish your wife, because I know couples where when there's a split over religion, I know couples who have made it through and figured it out. And I know some where it's just been absolutely disastrous and they've turned against each other and used either the one person's religiosity or one person's lack of religiosity against them in custody battles and all this other stuff. You're in a really admirable spot with your partner. And I appreciate you calling in to get thoughts. I think it's funny that Darante described, in this last year, I've kind of changed my take on this. And everybody gets to that point where you have to make a decision. Am I going to be me and let the people who love who I actually am into my life? Or am I going to keep pretending to be less than me or an alternate version of me in order to keep these relationships? And I'm not here to tell anybody what's right for them. There are people who may well have the best life by constantly subduing themselves in order to keep the peace with the people that they care about. That may be one of the greatest sacrifices ever, to kind of die unto yourself. I'm not convinced that that's the case. I'm not convinced it's the case for most people. And it's definitely not the case for me. Because if people don't like who I actually am, why would I want them around if they like who I'm pretending to be? Because now I'm a liar. And they like that I'm a liar, even though they don't know it. And I can't live like that.
Just touching on what Darante said just lastly, is that that's kind of where my conundrum is. If I take my family are great. They are, like, my parents are everything that I could have asked for. They've taken care of me, provided. They are great, absolutely great. And like, I don't want to lose that relationship with them. Granted, I'm not like in a heavy feud with them that I'm going to lose them, but I don't want to. I wouldn't like to get to that place where, like Darante, you said, you just let your parents go. But granted, our situations are probably very different.
Very much so.
So like it's like for example, at my wedding reception, they insisted that I say grace, and I was like, I really wouldn't like to, because I like you, as I'm not convinced of a God. Therefore, I don't want to just put on a show. It's supposed to be my day, I want it to be about me and my wants. But then it turned into a little bit of a battle, and I don't know if it's the hill I want to die on with my parents. I really would not like to, because they are absolutely phenomenal otherwise. So yeah, that's just my conundrum. But thank you both for sharing that. Really appreciate it.
I do want to add to. I just want to stress what Matt said. Like, these things are deeply personal and deeply individual.
Mm.
And like you said, if this is a thing that you can tolerate with your parents, then if you feel that, because your words were like, I don't want to lose my relationship with my parents over this, then don't. That's the beauty of autonomy. That's the beauty of agency, is that you can make that decision. Like, if the worst thing that this does to me is make me uncomfortable when they're around me, then maybe I can tolerate that. But also, you do have to toe that line of wondering, like, are these moments going to end up being dehumanizing for me, though? Is this going to make me feel like I can't be me? And so that's a balance that you do have to walk very carefully. But what I would encourage you to do is to start having, maybe not conversations directly on the subject with your parents, but start having conversations that are more about you and your parents, not the religion, not the deity, not the superstition, just about, hey, this is who I am as a person. We don't have to get into the religious stuff, because sometimes even as adult children, we still have to teach our parents how to love us. We have to reintroduce them to who we are now, because who I was when you raised me may not be who I am now. And that's sometimes where parents get stuck. They get stuck on the boy that I raised, not the man that I'm looking at. And it's hard, but you can have that conversation if you want to preserve that relationship, where it doesn't ever even have to be about the religion. It's just about your autonomy.
Yep.
Thanks a lot for calling, David. I hope that was helpful. I got one more call I got to move through before we get to Super Chats.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thanks.
Awesome.
I did something the other day that I think I've only done one other time in my life. And this will strike people as, this will tell you a little bit about what goes on in my head. I was in the Navy for 8.5 years. I say fuck. I say fuck a lot. I say fuck way more than people think I should when I'm doing shows about this stuff. I get it. I do it on purpose. I enjoy it. I love the word. I don't think words have magical power, and I don't think a particular phoneme should be offensive. But trust me, I'm not oblivious to how people take it. And here's the evidence for that. 2 days ago, I think it was, I was on the phone with my mom, and we were joking about the fact that I got bit by some bugs and it caused a rash, and so I had to go see a doctor and everything else. And I was trying to remember about how I reacted to poison oak. And so I called her to talk about it. And she's like, yeah, and it was this, and you did this, and when I was a kid, I listened to one of my friends' medical advice, which is probably why I hate unsolicited medical advice, who told me to put bleach on it. And so I was in the bathtub with scars and crying, and I was, plenty old. And so my mom said something to me and I was like, yeah, but Mom, I'm fucking old. That's only the second time in my life that I know for sure I've dropped an F-bomb in front of my mom. I'm 55. And while I've used it in front of my brother, my dad, everybody else, it was, your mom's your mom. And so when we talk about softening ourselves for somebody else, I know my mom finds that offensive and problematic. And I, at 55, still want my mom to think nicely of me. And so I don't do it. But I did it the other day. And you know what? I did it without batting an eye. It didn't bother me. And when it was over, I was like, hey, I just said fuck to my mom. Yep, I guess I'm old now. I guess I'll say and do whatever I want. And to my mom's credit, I'm not even sure she heard it, but she didn't bat an eyelash and didn't complain or anything else. And it might have been the most grown-up thing that ever truly happened. And it only took till I was 55 years old for us to reach a point where neither one of us were freaked out that I said fuck. Because I remember getting my mouth washed out with soap and having to go out to the garage and get the belt just for using shit or damn, which is really weird to me because I'm like, damn's in the Bible. What the fuck? What the fuck are you complaining about? Damnation.
Man, we couldn't say lie in my house. If we said lie, we got whooped. You had to say story. You're telling a story. It was rough.
Here we have our last call for today. Frank is calling from Texas, talking about the ability to move humanity forward. Frank, you're on with Darante and Matt. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. So you said something earlier. I am the captain of my own ship.
And I
To
think
the
if
extent that I
more
can
people,
be.
yeah, if more people, I feel that more people did that instead of relying on this imaginary mystical God, take charge of your life, be yourself. I come from a unique background. When I was 5, my brother cracked me in the head with a hammer. I was raised a Catholic child in the Catholic family, but they kicked me out of the first grade because I started asking too many questions out of the Catholic school. Why did they have to sacrifice that human? And they couldn't answer those questions. Something with that hammer changed the way I thought. It changed the way I perceive the world, and not in a bad way. I think in a better way. And you brought up a head injury earlier, talking about the soul. And there's just been a lot of friends that I've talked to about. Do you understand that gut feeling? Is that there's no proof of it, but I know so many times in life I've had that gut feeling, that gut instinct, like this ain't right, and I make that call and go, and it's worked out for the best. Not, I didn't pray, well, should I or shouldn't I? If I ever say, should I stay or should I go, I should have been gone. I'm questioning the situation. And so you brought up your mother earlier. I'm 62. I was in my late 20s when I was being tattooed. My mother had to come through, and she looked me in the eye. She could see the peripheral, but she didn't look, came back through. Sit down, young man, tell me all about him. Told her all about him. She said, I don't promote it. I don't condone it. You broke my heart when you became a man, but you're a man now, and you're your own man. And that's when I took her off that. I took her off that pedestal, that mother pedestal. She's got friends. My life does not, her life does not revolve around me, and it became a wonderful relationship. She knew I didn't believe what she believed, but there was respect there, mutual respect. She was much older. She came from a different time. But my grandmother told me a lot of things. She said, on your journey to nirvana, your inner peace or whatever, you might meet the Buddha. You might reach up and grab Muhammad's hand. You might reach Jesus' hand to find your inner peace, to get there, but find your own way. The ones you need to worry about are the ones running around the bottom of the mountain with a book and a gun saying, my way's the only way. Those are the problem ones. And as an old school she was old school Scottish Catholic. She didn't really say that, but she knew I was different. That I was I thought different, and so little things like you were talking about in a way picking your battles with your family. About because they're I've been kind of ostracized. Go ahead.
The people who are saying that it's my way. They are a problem, but it's really all of the people who are pointing to them saying that guy's way is the right way, because without the followers, it's just a lunatic with a sandwich board on the corner.
There you go. Different scares people. And because I'm so different than them, it scares them, because me being the young athlete and was always healthy, was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer, that scared them, so I'm scary to them because I'm real. I am who I am, and they don't like it. Okay, well, that's fine. I don't have to be around you. I don't have to go around you on the holidays and sit and listen to you talk about me like I'm not in the room. And things, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? I choose to be happy.
There are two things
but
like
sometimes, you need to be right. You need to stand up, for what's right. And it might not, something Grandma said was, if you look into the mirror and you don't like what you see, look into your eyes, because that's the only mirror you're ever going to need. And I remember doing that as a young man and went, oh no, she was right. And that's why I think we all have this ability within us. I don't know I don't even like to say the word God, but this spark of humanity in us but they dumb us down with religion. They dumb us down and dumb people down. People are afraid to step out of the box just to look over. They won't even look over to see what's out there. And it's a big, wonderful place. That's just the way I think. I have had so many instances. Like, the easiest one is like, you look at the phone, you know it's going to ring, and you know who it is. Not because they call every Thursday at 3:00. You just got that gut feeling, and I
the gut
always,
feeling again.
And this, well, it has to do also with.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with the colloquial. I was just making a callback.
Yeah, I am a skeptic. I am an atheist. I don't have enough evidence, and if bang, there's several of us around. God shows up, and I got okay. But that I don't know. It's just more. I've tried to help more people keep an open mind, and that's what I mean about skepticism. Keep an open mind. Don't close it off.
Yep.
This is, it's this way, and
All
the
you
only
gotta
way.
do is
Keep
make
an
sure it's
open
not so
mind.
open that your brain falls out.
For sure.
There you go. And well,
Frank,
that hammer sure changed things.
Frank, I appreciate the thoughts,
Yeah.
but I got to wrap it up. My producer's pinging me.
Okay, you bet. Thank you. Bye bye.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, that whole interaction with family, it's potentially difficult. It would be very nice if we could all be confident and comfortable with who we are and only care what we think about us. But the truth is, I think I care what other people think about me. Not everybody. There are people.
Yeah.
There are people who hate me, and I'm like, cool. Couldn't possibly bother me less that you hate me. It's not a thing. But there are other people that when they express concern or disappointment, it bugs me. I don't, I already disappointed my mom just about as much as I possibly can, and we survived that. And now it's just I don't want to disappoint the people who are closest to me, but I know I'm going to. And the relationships that I value the most are the ones where I've disappointed them, they've disappointed me, and while we both know that, we found a way to either stop disappointing each other or to say, yep, that's the way that's just going to go. And I just got to accept it. I don't like, it's like I smoked cigarettes for a number of years and I liked it. I liked it even after I quit, even after I hadn't had a cigarette for 10 years and started dating somebody who smoked. And I loved it. Just go ahead, smoke around me. I don't know why. There's something there. And I think it's because I grew up and everybody at my grandmother's, like you walked in and it was you couldn't see to the other side of the house because everybody smoked. And so I think that was a comforting place. And I like to smoke, but I don't like what it does to my body. I don't like the way my clothes smell. I don't like the way the house smells. I don't like it. So I'm glad I haven't had a cigarette since 2011, 2010.
Congratulations.
Well, that's not true. I haven't smoked regularly since 2010. I've had a cigarette at some point but anyway, figuring out how to make those boundaries work around people. Yeah. Me not saying fuck in front of my mom, me not smoking except outside, even long before everybody had to go outside, because my mom hated the smoke. Actually, it wasn't just because my mom hated smoke. I would not have been allowed to smoke in my mom's house. Like if I fired a cigarette up in my mom's house, I'd probably be dead. I mean, it's metaphorically speaking, but
man,
we got a bunch of super chats to get to. Everybody is, first of all, this has been an absolute pleasure. I hope you are willing to come back and hang out and do more shows with me and the rest of us here on the line. I've had an absolute blast. And it seems that is what a good chunk of people in chat are saying. And so what we do is we alternate these. I'll read the first one. Then as we switch through, you can just read one. We'll alternate back and forth and go from there. But awesome. $10 from William Mattis. Matt, help the mods are being mean to me. Get them. LOL, just kidding. Hope all's good. Give the critters love for me. Have an awesome rest of the week. Thank you. That we're looking forward to a really good weekend. But
awesome. And then we have $9.99 from Greg Markowski. Thanks for the show. Saw the Band of Heathens out of Austin on Labor Day. If they're performing in town, go see them. They're great. Thank you, Greg. You gave me a new band to check out.
Thanks, Greg. I think I've seen Band of Heathens.
Ooh.
$10 from Edian Unsen. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't butcher that. Thanks so much for having Darante on. This is undeniable evidence that my prayers of the eye patchless all-father of atheism have not gone unanswered. Thank you so
the
much.
all-father. All right, and then we got $9.99 from Brian Pooh KC. Matt, did you go to church camp at Windermere in the Ozarks?
Yes. Camp Windermere.
Wow.
I went multiple summers. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and I went around 8th grade. I moved to St. Charles, just outside of St. Louis, and in the summers we would go to Camp Windermere. Yeah, same camp my dad went to, by the way.
Ooh.
$5 from Archon. Workplace question: opportunity to work with a new client, but the religious employee, quote, does not want to work on that, i.e., underwear. Doesn't want to work
Mormon underwear?
Opportunity to work with a new client, but the religious employee does not want to work on that. So I guess the product that you're working on is underwear, but there's a religious employee that doesn't want to work on that. If it's the job, it's the job. So
that's how I view it.
The courts have ruled on this, although there is some pushback in the religious freedom realm there. The courts have pretty much decided that you get your religious freedom, but you don't get to have your religious freedom prevent you from doing a job. Like if you're a pharmacist, you're going to fulfill that prescription. You're not the doctor. You're not the patient. It doesn't matter if you're opposed to birth control. It doesn't matter if you think, this person's too young to be, having this. None of that matters. You do the job. And so I don't know specifically what your job is, Archon, but if designing underwear or doing something with underwear is part of the job, and somebody says, "Oh, my religion makes me uncomfortable working on underwear," then you need to go find another fucking job, because this is the job you signed up for. There was a follow-up $5 from Archon to get to the $10 bubble there. So,
and then we have 15 from Brian Cuminger. Please correct me. I'm so grateful to have now heard both Matt and Seth denounce political violence. I started to feel like the only one on the left who didn't want to punch a Nazi or anyone they decided was one. I appreciate that. That's real. That's real.
I don't want to punch anybody. I will say, sometimes when I'm out driving, there's a part of me that wants to throat punch everybody else on the road. But that's the part of me that is just kind of like being hyperbolic. $20 from Aliashana Silverbow. Sorry, I keep wanting to put an R in there. My dad was guest preaching and was being driven there. They passed a church with the same name, and my dad asked about it. The driver told him that the church had split over which side of the church the piano should be put on.
I'm familiar with incidences such as these.
I remember every church I went up, every church, there's the main dais, and there's a piano on one side and an organ on the other. Mm-hmm. It doesn't surprise me that somebody would throw a fit about which side the piano's on. And it's probably some pretentious music major fuck who's like, no, it changes the acoustics and it needs to be just thus and so.
All right, we have $10 from Mac. Matt, thanks for the advice in June about my mom wanting my kids at church for Dad's memorial. I held my ground. The resulting sermon was so ghastly, Mom won't go back again, at least to that church. All right.
Wow. That's actually good to hear, because a sermon, I usually stay pretty guarded at funerals. There are probably going to be some exceptions. I'm 55. My folks are older. The next generation of my family is going to start dying off over the next 10 years. And I'm going to end up going to a bunch of funerals. And my view on this is really easy. The funerals aren't for the dead, and they're not for a God. The funerals are for the rest of us to share our stories, commiserate how we're going to feel loss over this person no longer being an active part of our lives. Everything else is something else entirely, and I have the capacity to compartmentalize and ignore that. But I've been to funerals where there was an altar call. I've been to funerals where I was essentially called out, but not by name. This is the one problem of being, having hundreds of thousands of subscribers and viewers and all that stuff. There are members of my family that talk about me behind my back, and I don't care. It doesn't bother me, whatever, But I know in one case, they got the person who was delivering part of the funeral service to throw in a little extra kind of barb pointed, to try to draw me back to the fold. And if it had gone just like a centimeter further, metaphorically speaking, I'd have stood up and told him to fuck off right in the middle of the funeral. But
that's my type
fortunately,
of church service.
I got a little decorum. I can be demure when I need to be, since everybody's learning a new word.
I like that.
$10 from Mr. Borkua. 10. I remember crying a lot trying to seek God while studying for the pulpit. I never heard anything back, much less got any useful help from others. Sucked big. Also, I vote for a Seth and Darante show. Have you done anything with Seth yet?
We were on a birthday celebration together, but we didn't interact much for that. But I get that a lot, though.
I think you and Seth would have a good time.
$9.99 from Secular Humanist. Hey there, how you doing? Matt, you're my all-time favorite debater. Good to see you here, Lamar. Well, thank you. I'm glad to be seen.
Thank you so much. $10 from Monkey Typewriter. Question for both. Since you guys have deconstructed, is there one thing in retrospect that you were investing more energy in rationalizing to maintain your faith? For example, Age of the Earth, evolution, soul. I'm gonna have to think for a second, because I'm sure there was something that I was like clinging to harder.
Oh, that's easy for me. God was the thing that I was rationalizing to maintain my faith. Every time someone did something that was helpful for me, I had to assign it to God. If someone did something that, I was praying that my bills got paid, and someone actually cared enough about me and said, hey, I'm going to help you with this, instead of me realizing that this human being just took from their budget and supplied to mine, I would rationalize that as, ooh, God just worked a miracle. And then eventually it was just like, well, why would God have to take from their budget to work a miracle? And then, so yeah, I did a lot of rationalizing with God. That was it for me.
Yeah. Why does that person have to have less money so that I can get caught up?
Yes.
Yeah. I think probably the thing that I think having a moral foundation probably is the thing I hung on to the longest. And that's only because of conversation with my uncle. He said, we're asking where he gets his morals from, because, without God, there's no objective source. And I was so stuck with, there must be an objective, moral, absolute foundation, that it didn't even occur to me that morals are situational, and that you can have placeholder foundational moral criteria that is then used as the standard by which you measure. And then that standard can be revised as you learn more about getting better. Secular morality is superior to any religious morality for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is because the goal is to get better at getting better. It is not a static system put in place thousands of years ago that we have to either adhere to or come up with excuses of how we manipulate a new version of Christianity in this new world. Why don't we just recognize that Christianity is not what it was 300 years ago because of the influence of secular influences and the influence from other religions as well. And that's true for every system. It is a complex network where we're learning stuff and we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And so many people are standing on the shoulders of all the thinkers that have come before us that they can't even look back and see those thinkers. And so it must be, there's got to be a God as the absolute moral foundation. No, not only does there not have to be, there's no reason to think there is. And that's the real secret here, is that every single objection that any religious person has ever leveled at secular morality is not in any way solved by appealing to a God. A God's opinion about morality is still just subjective. It's not a standard that is objective. If it's divine command theory, it's an opinion. If it's because it's God's nature, then God itself is irrelevant and it's just the nature, and that is the nature that we can point to. It's the Euthyphro dilemma all over again. Anyway, sermon off.
All right. Ooh, $20 from Apostate Sisters. So happy to see Darante on the line. A great show with two of the most well-versed atheists around. Much love from the sisters, Darante. Thank you, Patty and Nancy. I appreciate you as always.
See, I don't know Patty and Nancy, but now I do. now I got to know. $10 to Skeptical Vet. Darante is must-see TV. I knew it the very first time I heard him speak. So happy to see him here, hosting with another legend. You both are great. Matt and Darante, thank you both for all you do. Thank you so much, Skeptical Vet. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay, Doublety Doop. Darante, $10 from Doublety Doop. Darante is great at still manning until it feels absurd to agree with their own position. He's great at this. So are you, Matt. The show is great as usual. Thank you. Thank you, Doublety Doop.
That's a cool name. Doublety Doop.
It is.
And it's funny because Arden and I have this phrase that is very similar that we sing as placeholder lyrics for when we don't know the lyrics thing, which was actually fun.
Doopadoo.
Oh, wow.
Doopadoo. 50 from Raphael Vittorati. Matt, my stepfather was a devout Christian and was the man who raped me from the age of 8 to 12. I watched him do much worse to my mother. He died without paying for what he did. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I can't imagine. And I think the only thing that brings me any comfort is that you are at least at a place where you can talk about it and identify this correctly by the right terms, and to note that there was no consequence in this life for that atrocity that he committed. And this is one of the things that appeals to people about religion, is because, hey, without God, you might never see justice. Well, let me tell you something. There's no reason to think that there is a God or any justice coming, but what on earth makes you think that someone who dies, having received no penalty here, is going to get justice in an afterlife? Because the Christian model has nothing to do with the content of your character necessarily. It is about whether or not you are part of the chosen redeemed. We are all reprobate sinners. We have all done terrible things. It's not that Christians are good or better. It's just that they're the ones who are forgiven. You have no idea under this Christian model. That's not justice. Justice is when you get what you deserve. Mercy is when you suspend justice and get something that you don't deserve. And under the Christian model, none of us deserve a positive afterlife, and yet some of them will get it. And they will get it not because they did anything to deserve it, not because they did anything to earn it, not because they're good people, but because of who their friend is. That's not a moral system, and it's not justice. And I'm terribly sorry that happened to you, but I am encouraged that you're able to talk about it and to point other people to the fact that sometimes good things happen to bad people. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. Sometimes evil goes unpunished. And there doesn't seem to be any God stepping in to do anything about it here. So all you have are promises that God will deal with it later. God will deal with it in his time and in his way. And I say no. I say that we are justice. We are the only justice we're going to see. It is up to us, all of us, to sit here and say, we want to change the world so that nobody can get away with what he got away with, so that nobody has to suffer and see that same person day after day, knowing that they're never going to face consequences for the unbelievable trauma that they did to another human being. Thank you so much for sharing, Raphael. I got nothing to add.
$10 from Mario Marufo. What I was going to say was that I had more power at work than my boss thought because I had read Karl Marx. I had to stand up for myself not to get fired in ways that in the moment looked insane. I've been there, Mario, so I completely understand. That's hilarious.
$17 from Lemon Peel Angelfish. Matt and Darante, awesome show. Shout out to all the fantastic mods, call screeners, producers. Absolutely. Thank you for reminding me. I tend to do it at the end of the show anyway, but it's worth pointing out. The Line Network, we have all these other shows. I mentioned what the schedule was. Tonight's The Hang Up. Thursday is Transatlantic Call-In Show at 2 p.m. Sundays, there's a Sunday show at 2, and there's a Sunday show after dark at 7. Mondays, Skeptalk. Tuesdays, Chewed Gum. And then I'll be back again next Wednesday with Eve. But in addition to the people that you see here, the whole reason that Darante and I are able to sit here and have fun today, and believe me, I had fuck tons of fun today, is because Arden's down the hall producing, and our moderators are in chat maintaining the peace, and our call screeners are there getting us the callers that we want, and maybe some of the calls that we don't want, but it's all good for that. And so thank you so much, Lemon Peel Angelfish. That is very, very
shout out
kind
to
of you.
Dragon for screening tonight.
Yes, thank you, Dragon, for screening. Woo.
All right, this is $10 from Sthump10 or Stump10. Hi, Darante. What is your biggest challenge as a Black atheist talking to Black theists? Mine is talking to them about evolution. By the way, I love your content. Keep up the great work. I think my biggest challenge when dealing with when talking to Black theists as a Black atheist is that there's always presupposition and assumption about where I stand. And so the moment they find out that I am not a theist, that I'm not a believer, they automatically begin to attack wherever they believe I stand, which unfortunately doesn't lead to a very productive conversation. So instead of them asking me, what do you believe about these things? It's always the assumption, well, since you don't believe in my particular God, you must believe in these specific things about the universe. And that's pretty aggravating.
Yeah, they immediately build a straw man to knock down. And it reminds me of Devin calling earlier, where he's like, oh, but you atheists, you don't have any way to ground your logic. Okay, well, I don't think anybody has any way to ground their logic, but at least if you and I both agree that logic is reliable, then we can use that tool. And
absolutely,
you claiming that logic is reliable because of your magical friend doesn't in any way demonstrate that it is in fact reliable because of your magical friend.
Absolutely.
$10 for the Sheridan Bernasconi. Thank you, Matt and Darante. Still no evidence for God from many, many theists. Yeah. Although, no, I won't. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. I'm going to do a video about the difference between when people say there's no evidence for God. Well, what about anecdotal testimonial evidence? I need to make a video. If I haven't already done it, I'll have to go back and look about the difference between evidence that is consistent with a particular claim and evidence that is supportive of a particular claim. A dead body is consistent with the proposition that Darante killed them, but a dead body itself is not evidence that Darante killed them. Sorry to make you the murderer, but
it happens. All right, $9.99 from Cessna Pilot. I hope I got it right. Edgar, essay makes you stronger. I don't know what GDIAF means, but I can almost guess. But yeah, Edgar, chill out. Like, that's what he's saying.
I asked chat. It means go die in a fire.
Oh, well,
all right. I would not have guessed that.
I'm glad you abbreviated it because I'm with you. I appreciate it, Cessna Pilot. The very concept And this, by the way, is not the first time that particular conversation has happened. It's the first time it's happened with Edgar. But there was at least one episode of the Atheist Experience, probably more. But there's one that I recall where somebody basically made the argument that God allows that stuff so that you learn a lesson and can grow and improve. And you want to see somebody explode? Yeah, I exploded during that episode. $10 Canadian from Matt Cracks Wise. Maybe I missed the announcement, but when does Darante's own show on the line launch? Darante, by the way, has a couple of his own shows. I believe there should be links down in the description. You do a show on Sunday and on Wednesday. So did you push today's show to a different time so you could do this?
I did. We just moved it up 30 minutes early.
See, that's the kind of giver that we like to interact with here, because you got to do multiple shows and we got to have a bunch of fun. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a strong confidence that today will not be the only day that Darante appears on the line. Who knows when or where, but yeah, I'm happy to have him back anytime I got an opening and he's got time. Thanks so much, Matt Cracks Wise.
All right, $10 from Jamnik06. Wasn't sure if it was his slick voice, the way he appreciates Matt's arguments, or his cool-ass hat. Now I think it's his story and arguments that I like the most. Bring Darante back on the line. All right, y'all going to have me blushing brown over here. Y'all got to chill.
That's just, they're spewing facts. $10 from Fairy Cookie. Love seeing you all together here. Have so many questions, but not enough dollars to ask them here. Can't express how much knowing I'm not alone in my deconstruction has helped. Thanks for all you do. Yeah, you are. I think that's probably the most valuable thing that any of us have done. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy when somebody gives up their religious beliefs, when somebody embraces skepticism and humanism. I remember the debate that I did in Amarillo with Abdu Murray, and there was a young girl who came up and she said, my parents are atheists, but they let me explore religion and everything else. And after tonight's debate, I'm an atheist. And I'm like, I will take 5 million more batshit crazy calls that go nowhere if I can get one more 12-year-old girl to embrace skepticism, humanism, and not fall prey to religions that are, let's be honest, for the most part, religions are harder on women than they are on men.
Absolutely.
That may be true of virtually everything in the world, but religions in particular. You want to talk about, the patriarchy. Well, you can debate about how much influence patriarchy has in different areas of our life. But in religion, it's the patriarch of patriarchs right there.
All right, this is $20 from L. Gleason, pronounced L. Gleason. So I got it right. I appreciate that.
Nice.
I have a coworker who likes to say that faith is the evidence for things unseen, therefore evidence of God. Your thoughts? Well, that's just a scripture from Hebrews, and that shit didn't make sense when it was written in the book, and it doesn't make sense now.
Yep. I was all ready to add in, Hebrews 11:1, blah, blah, blah. But nope, nothing to add.
Yes.
it doesn't make sense to say faith is the evidence, because no, it ain't.
Right.
$10 from Monkey at Typewriter. Also, Darante, I think you're a fantastic voice, and I want to echo that. I hope you come back soon. I think you have a great style of questioning and provide valuable insights. Great show, gents. I'll just say amen.
Thank you. Yeah. And $13.99 Canadian from Gerardo. Great show. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your support.
Thank you so much. And the final super chat for today, which actually probably won't end up being the final super chat, because every time I say that, somebody decides to give another $10 and another $10 just to make me read more stuff, but that's fine. $10 from LG Son. Same coworker states that Godin proved God mathematically and logic. Sure, that's not maybe Gödel? I don't know. I'm not impressed with what I found ontological or mathematical. I'd need to know more about the particular reference that's being made there. But if somebody's claiming that God has been demonstrated mathematically, what's the variable for God? And the numerical value of it. I think that probably when I hear things like that, like God's been proved mathematically, they tend to be attempts to show how incredibly improbable something is. And when it seems so improbable that it's indistinguishable from magic, that's when they can plug their God in. You know, oh, this just seems incredibly improbable. But you know what the probability of the universe is? 1. It's here. We know it's here. It exists. The probability is 1. Whether or not, no matter how unlikely it is, how did you determine that it's so unlikely that the only explanation for it could be a God? How many other universes have you been able to explore? Do you have a universe that was created by a God and a universe that wasn't created by a God? So you can do a side-by-side kind of A-B comparison? Because I only know of the one universe and I don't know how it came to be. But I don't see any reason to think that it's a God. As a matter of fact, if there were a God, and it's the kind of God that most people advocate for, the kind of God that Darante and I both believed in when we believed, I'm confused as to why that God isn't communicating with us clearly and openly. What could he possibly need to hide? What could hiding his existence do to benefit us? Now, maybe you can say, hey, God's ways are not our ways, and he knows everything. And so he knows that if he revealed himself publicly, that it would cause these problems and be a stumbling block to people's ability to follow. Except that God's also supposedly the one that made everything and made everything the way it is, which means he created the very scenario in which he can't reveal himself for reasons that he can't describe to people who can't understand. Seems like it's all God's fuck up. It's not my problem if I don't have evidence or good reason. And as I said, there'd be one more. Here you go.
$10 from Mario Marufo. Back in. Good faith is what you put in the unseen when you have evidence of it. Okay.
Fair point. Thanks so much, Mario. Huge thank you to Dragon for screening calls and to all of our moderators here tonight. Darante, this has been amazing. I'm happy to get you back whenever we have time. Tell everybody where they can find you so they can go watch more of your content when you're not here with me.
You can find me on YouTube. My name is Darante Lamar, and that is the name of my channel. And I just share content about building secular community. That's my passion. That's my hobby. I figured I've spent 20 years pastoring. I might as well not stop now. So I'm just bringing those talents to the secular community.
And on that note, you can go ahead and roll the credits. I'll just talk over the credits. We've been running for a while here. I'm going to finish right at 9 o'clock. Huge thank you to everybody. We're going to be enjoying NARBC this weekend. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, look it up, NARBC. If you want to come over and hang out, please say hi. But if you don't, at a minimum, share clips of the shows, share information about the line, get information out so that we get more and better callers and can have more and better conversations, and so that we can have more and better guests like we had here tonight. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, spread some humanism, secularism. Patreon.com/calltheline to support us in case we get demonetized.